Hello, my name is Justin Arnold, author and voice of A Dog Outside at Night in a Fight. Please visit my bookstore at worksbyjustinarnold.com where you can find literary, cinematic, and musical feats of showmanship. I now present to you my first book, A Dog Outside at Night in a Fight. One. The sun-beat prison lay landways time and attention amidst the pit of some hermetic desert valley. It might swallow the fortress of barbed wire and cinder block hole if rain thirst quenched, if quickened sand were allowed to choke down a single life from that tomb within the festering mind of man. Mere mercies to die from this place, in heart afar. A lizard palmed the sun-blasted block wall, tongue shoveling into a butchered bowl that once served sight, and the sound of try and dust speckles the speckled dragon as it darts off. A cinder block, loose in its mortar, juts about, tumbles out, and it drop over rot and it womp. An array of scattered hell dust light past the void, catch some geode broke in two, inlet ablaze about the bridge of his broken bearing. The crooked anvil, nostriled into his face, sucks in searing soot, and it flushed the side a whirl. This man, greased like gold in his finger-combed hair, his beard grown over, smells like rain. His aim's to get out of this hole he'd dug himself. He sticks his neck out to see where's payment and pain held receipt below. The rock he'd cleaved to push was just a-waitin' on the show. And twice the width from which he burred the gristle in his best shoulder was grinding, and piece by piece the man knuckled on him one more arm. Now what? Stuck. Waist deep against the force of the fall, and the wall was too hot to touch, and no grip could be made, and so he has to just let go. The coral edges of the exit shanks down his shin bones, and it catch him by foot. Hooked and crooked, he spanks against it all, and he's upside down and dangled. You look up and over and above, and that little lizard cyclops was sitting still batting its one winker. Legs overhead, his head near bashed into the corner point of a beveled concrete cinder block that he by all measure the meaning sporked out, his wind knocked out, and his skint knees hammered into his nose, and his mouth burst into a sputtering taste of salt lick. His body writhed there, a silent hoot. A whirlwind all about, and he just won't take it. The balloon in his rib cage pop it flat gimp there in his belly. Here come a sting, pulling at his nuts inside of his nutsack. He flicked so hard at them panging balls his asshole went spastic. Felt like if he might fall backwards into his own asshole, and if left be upturned and trapped. Insides, outsides. But there in red spittle he laid kissed in sugared earth. Pain hurts. Any man taste it can take it. The flavor of this man's lot in this life, that's what's so hard to swallow, and as hard as his was, a gas. Oh, he guessed he'd catch his wind. Stick-limbed javelins strove in their currents a hot lash about that far-off folding strata. The Sierra Madres. Motherfucking mountains are beautiful. And that little green shit running against the wall upturned into the void and clung still but for its beating heart, and from that perch the man's foot raced to freedom. The cooling sun, stabbing its many swords into the cloud banks of a tempest. Geysers of charged blood-orange spat into the range. A cat o' nine tails arc there, lashing implosions. This gale is going to eat by light of the sun in the sunset like it was going to squall. He was tiny at that distance. A horned jackrabbit could compare. This rare sight was hard at it. A muzzle flash and a thunder clap. A prison guard in a watchtower aims to hit him in the back. His hip pocket went pregnant in a snap. Yep. He lost and found his quicker steps again. His jogging, tugging at his torn flesh, pleading with him to pay attention, but it doesn't sting like nothing. Not yet. Blood, sweat, and tears fall off of a man. His hip pocket gagged, and he could feel the warm froth slick down into his groin and cake up the crack of his ass. No bat out of hell could have wobbled so fast. Two. And bruised arc and flashlight, a red tail set sail mocked afloat in the lukewarm grays of gravity, our purgatory between this crust and forever. If the lone hawk's simple desire was to catch a phoenix, well, by God, this was taking a shot at it. That and off the apron upland a distant work-in fire cast a penniless carousel about the basin. Woof! 3 sat around the spit. The fat of this world lent them little more than a handful of rooster teeth, but they did lay claim to one another, and in that company no price could be matched. The little one lapped in arms of origin, this child, star-crossed in mother's looks. A man might die happy to have come so far with so much. But then again, he might die happier to go with them just a little further. 41 miles southwest of Rio Grande, smack dab in the asshole of the Chihuahuan desert. They were knee-deep and in a heap of caca. Not literally, but figuratively. Indeed, it was a black market bus stop. A Mexican family, that's what's waiting for the bus to show. Its driver, a coyote, to take them nearest the northeasterly river so as to cross into U.S. territories and be in Texas. Happily. They all saw up into the electrocution of the hereafter, and it looks though it might puke green, triggering upon that stilted wingspan of that really big bird hanging far out and up there in a sky waiting, watching, Mother Earth and all its stupid-looking, buck-toothed beasties cutting their teeth all alone and at the same time together. This man swallows his empty throat and carves his hen off its skewer. If a bad man, the wolf won't stop at a single bite. A sliver of hen fat goes pitched into the mid-air at a mongrel, won't let it alone go hit the ground. No, whole is it captured and whole is it gobbled. It puts on a serious study, chops licked in what was and what off-cut to come. No, she will finish the meal started. This living thing, its focus not moving, masked in lost feather a raven, a tight quill of fur, neaten with kid hands, her golden whisk, unlit in fermented cherry, her cloven wet nose scrunched up over the top of her blue gums, saw-toothed and glowing teeth, one broken but lit dimly, mantle exposed, it surrounded by those pointing inside the great heat-huffing maw. The she-wolf must have swallowed the devil, for its bifurcated tail snaked back against her pitch-dark face, and then again she swallows the demon, and then again it muscling out of her mouth, all tacky and wet. She stands on the pads of her paws, thrown from birth a different breed of cat. Dog-like, a mix maybe, its head big as an African hyena's, and the answers to what it was sat deep inside its stalwart skull and thinking at you. You gotta scare the poor child. I'm not scared. See? She's not scared. He put a strip of that cooked hen in the child's bowl, and the 5-year-old trapped in a fur suit comes to laying over top of that doll's shoulder, its head 4 times as big as the little girl's. The she-wolf knew one of 2 things. Whiskers make for tickles, and tickles make for shares in hand. The little girl's giggles and greasy chicken fingers may have very well been this lucky dog's most favorite thing in the whole wide, wide world. But if a man be of goodness, if a good man, a single bite will turn him into. The man's eyes catch those of his woman's, his lady, O mother of all she holds blameless, and with bated breath her warning, the stammer in his words, take pause. He go on ladle a tin cup from the mouth of a kettle, sat near to them wood coals, off the outskirts of flame, all pulsating in that white ash ember. Beans and the syrup therein, drown the cup over. He makes haste to spill him atop that stripped hen in his daughter's bowl first, before the sting of that cup knuckled round his middle finger, warn him enough is enough. But then there goes a cup, lost about a jig in his juggling hands, and the cup goes cool just enough to believe its tricks twice more. And after he'd haphazardly filled all their bowls, he went on ahead and bucketed the rest of those beans away from source heat, and with the skin of his boot, footed them off to spill over and toward that wild thing won't stop staring. At least leave the kid alone to eat. Mama didn't get a spoonful cool before that kid think, turn him into what, Papa? And the sky took off, chasing after its own shadows. A scatter, a flash flicker, a gruff stammer, that darkness sparked darkness. Papa's face held in mind's eye some laser within, some thought and fear, and if measure spoken, contagious, spaced on that scale, his gaze toward the she-wolf. Her pelt standing cowlick between her shifting shoulder blades like she knew she was being seen, and she did. The she-wolf's power beefed into the base of her skull, and her earring satellites pinned down into the kettle of all that was, and just like that, none was. A monster, bald white, that child's fists wrenched tight, and Mama felt this moment's marrow chilling the child. Okay, that's enough. I'm not scared, Mama. Anna, there is no such thing. They say there is no such thing. Well, that alone tells you just how rare it is that it happens. You see, for the wolf is wise and can see into a man or a little girl, can tell if your purpose, your path in this world is a worthy one. What wild-eyed mischief, sure enough, charm wouldn't win this woman over. He begged inch just a little farther. Squeezed, the kid surmounted all obstacles of fright with a look, her look's the look of her mother, and both mother and daughter each giving this man their side eyes. And the she-wolf's jowls is flapping into the depths of that cast-iron kettle for the bean that might lead to one more bean, and look a here, another. The kid wittedly smirks. Jorge bit you. And the she-wolf slung that hill of beans cocktail off her snout in answer to her name, and the kettle clanged when it hit the ground. That hairy high-haunched constable cocked into them last words spoken, and a curious chill blow about, whistling into the air. See, Jorge did bid me. On the finger! In all the glitz and grandeur a dad might muster, in swoop a gesture. A man, and every man, this family man, stands center stage, the spotlight of his daughter's leaping heart, and with a great bellow he play a snarling snark. His facial expressions, cartooning imitations, down-tempo, in real time. That little girl's favorite Saturday morning Tasmanian devil come to stuntin' to his mind. He danced dizzy as a tornado and beatbox his many words with the dogged bravery of a rock-ribbed buffoon. And a gamut of bursting spittle, his teeth snippety-snap, snapping over a flash dance of spirit fingers. And the savage hairs of his mustache walked like a woolly bear, and that caterpillar went crawling and gnawing on the first knuckle of his fist. And for all the rip-roaring hullabaloo, he slapstick a skin-flapping forefinger into the air, and he held it freeze-frame in action, but the skin flap went, hoo-ha! There. What milkman mockery! This man milking it for all it's worth. Squealing in fright, surprised at the sight, he turns to his daughter in awe, a delight. On the one hand, a nub, a shorter digit, the chicken nugget, a stub. That famed fingernail-less finger just a wagging its way in short beating ovals abreast the hairy knuckles of his balled-up fist. And it just kept on, kiddin' a kid. I stepped onto Jorge's big toe. Did she turn you into? Slowly, I started to feel a tingle in my finger, and it really, really tingled. I gasped. Papa gasps. Anna gasps. My eyes grew bigger, mine bigger. My ears, they wiggled. My voice deeper and deeper. I howled out, ouch! Papa! Anna's heart-shaped face decorated ear to ear in little square kid teeth. Her voice box stops. Her sprawls out in silent bops. The tittering of a ticking tummy time bomb held in the cradle song of a mother's arms, and it was at any time she may pop. Anna's mama and papa look up, smiling, pointing their smiles at one another. This kid had chosen you to let you be a part of it. It's a magical thing to love a thing so much that you understand the universe to bend itself mightily on your behalf, so that everything must understand itself to work out on your behalf. The armor of love has no chink, but to let it go, and so we think. And for the first time in a long time, Papa saw the doubt in Mama's eyes, and it touched him like his daughter's booming laughter. Anna rewinds. She fast-forwards to all the good parts of Papa's one-man show for Mama one last time. Everything is gonna be just fine. Ouch! And that snaggletooth she-wolf cocks her head on a dog's ear, as if twisted scrutiny could lend an ounce of sense toward this family's lunacy. Mama goads the child in kisses that tickle, and for that child's laughter, everything makes sense. And jealousy and love, doggone jealousy and love. The wolf-hound swallows her tongue. The apple in the tree, clowns, all three. Yowling holograms spat out of Papa's cheeks like two electrifying lenticular lunatics hidden in the flick light of the storm. His woman volt still, her touring child still hooting in arms. Mama pans her looks into the looks of the animal she-wolf and is spellbound for its green glassy gold hollow glimmer. It weighed her into the portal pools of its black hole face, and the woman let those crows take her wherever her mind makes believe to go. The wolf pet hadn't yet told her anything she hadn't yet already feared. A gorged barrel ballistic echo rush on rich, its ears pitchfork and it razorback, and the she-wolf tuned up on all fours. Papa swivels his chin over his shoulder, and they all transfix their faces towards that plain view, afar and fetched. It were a ghetto of gaggling ghost faces, brooding out from an ear-hole of darkness, tumbling into the electrocution like a silly ribbon cascading off the yoke of its spool. They hunt, hearing after June bugs, lost in this torpid storm, flying like idiots and feeding. Now that praying bird was suicidal, high as a jet plane when it claps aim bombardment. Law fetched the fall, and a tri-horn spur went knuckling into a squabbling pulse. A bat, a white bat. Out in that great big silence, it was screaming its head off, and then it wasn't screaming anymore. Just imagine it, out there, this and the family and the pitchfork pet. How speechless, in silence, they said. Then came a mechanized trundle, singing its cradle song, and tender lulls its lullaby, and a single headlamp ramps into the far-flung hills. Papa was expecting this bus, the Coyote, to take them across border lines into U.S. territories and be in Texas, happily. The Coyote, quick, gather your things, we cross over. Mama and Papa scramble for a pot to piss in, but all they got was all they own, and the she-wolf danced the two into berserk circles, nipping and yipping at their heels, trying to herd the two off the ledge of this frantic uproar as they stage their few belongings. Mama got nipped on the butt. Papa jerks his hat off and swats that dog off of his lady, and the dog balks back and flinch, nipping and yipping up at him in its gruff language of yore, and the two stand and duel like that, back and forth, to and fro. The kid stands in a sweater's hug, day dress stamped in baby's breath and red cowboy boots. She aims a dark shot wish for that blasted ornament come on kicked in stardust destiny. The bus was pitch void on the far side of a geyser, what flashed terrain. That gamut swept over, about come to halt, and did so, licked in devil's dust, and Anna was swallowed up into the halo of its one headlight. "Get back!" With the swat of his hat, Papa tip a dog's ear, and a track of large paws dust a hoop around Anna, and both the child and the animal lean a hug in for the other, and that dog's tail bats the ground twice as it stops. Anna rubs her pup's boo-boo, and she glances up at her Papa with a sharp glare, and it points, and her Papa felt it. He asks if she's okay. Anna folds that big hairy ear backward into the palms of both her little hands, and it slowly stands up straight on its own. She nods. Papa couldn't fight off a smile. Anna was too cute. He fixed his hat on his head and took on into that spotlight. Mama lug a carrying case over, contemplating his shadows cast against that source energy, and she watches him terminate. The headlight went out, and Papa point flashed into darkness afloat in the retractor beam, vacuuming him into the desert night. His wife saw his arm was still up for shade, and she saw it go limp down against his side, still, body pulsing in the night like a ghost. White. Papa heard the driver's side door open. It slammed shut, and those boot heels stomped towards him, stomping after him. His face facing the darkness and his back turned against all he had ever known and loved. He was blinking fast when it fell over his ears. The rope caught him up under the brim of his hat, and it cinched down hard, and it snaps the hat off of his head, and that hat went to front flipping into the air. Papa did paw for his neck, and when he did, that dull figure takes a jab step and swings, hips hard into it. Papa's head lashed over the back of his shoulders, a thump pop trumpeting out of his nostrils. A human rag doll, his body implodes like an important building. One ear claps for his spinal cord, and his head skip off a shoulder blade, and that was it, and there he lay, a mess. Breathing. The van come aglow when Mama's eyes fixed to see that out there figure hunkered over a heap and then standing out against it. The she-wolf had already run for it, closing in on half the distance by now. She'd pitched into that horde like a channel of white noise spinning out past its peak volumes. Mama grasped for the child, a shrill of guts into the night, battle crying like war. It opens its mouth and it shows its 3 glowing tooths and it pounds into a person. The triggered projectile barreled off, and sparks flew, and the she-wolf shot her many cries, yowping, into a great nothingness, in the middle of a great nowhere. The coyote rolls out from under the wolf like a person might throw off a bearskin blanket for being too hot. She lay on one side, and that side was wet, and the wet ran red. Her whiskered foreleg caked, paddling in the puddle. Odd as it seemed, the she-wolf quit crying. The coyote watched this, pistol in hand and pointing at her many attempts to rise. He ducked over Papa within his reach and tugged the rope loose off of the lame body and rolls it across the front of its face. The snare was coarse, wiry, fashioned into a slip knot at the mouth of a pipe as long as a wood bat. Wet gore stream out the cuff of the coyote's duster, and it wick off the fixed sights of his cannon. The she-wolf was absolute in her agony, and in that the coyote left her, like so. Anna was a cutting blade folded up against her mama. It was a spiritless wind blowing in a boundary of cold gathering up against their warm backs. And they, both mother and daughter, watching through their puffing breaths into the gloom. The two had the other brave, what was. What bedeviling moonless in that dark wilderness would slog up to show itself in firelight before them, and not yet, but now, standing there in the weight of their plea. The mother and child had neither a word, no move to make. The coyote heft his red, wet, sopping arm into an L shape against his gut, and when the firearm got level, a racket spooked the hearing pangs. Mama was surprised how easy it was to take a bullet, and she didn't want to leave, but the hole it bore begun to burn inside of her chest. Anna is all on her own now, and had not a kind turn to anyone to say hello. A butcher had made his cuts. Anna rave. That child bawl cry, she cries out, a rage into the parroting echoes, strobe fled into the backfiring ethers, pleading into the upland rise against her like a seismic sea wave cast off into the outer darkness. Her skin stretched thin against her chin. The girl's yammering first most distort snap repulsions, a terrific gape, searing beyond all comprehension. Her blistering terror spew. She keel over and keen. She keel over and keen. His hemp lasso hooped for the roar, and it draw on the lines of her jaw. She saw her mama lay still, but mama was still taking small sips at the pink bubbles popping inside of her mouth. Snarling angel hairs taut in a slip knot blown into the jilted front. The coyote's catch pole romp a rope up behind both Anna's ears, and it hurts into the scrags of Anna's skull. and tress-tangled wretch. She is swept. The coyote pull-stringed the toy child up over the top of his head, and he put her on her toes, and that she-wolf pissed on in a puddle of dog-pissing blood. Anna get up and run a terrific circle around the coyote, and he timber her sidelong into a cartwheel, and his catch-pole key over twice as tight and all the more rigid. Anna hit on them rocks hard, face to his face, and one of Papa's eyeballs was out of its mind lying in the dirt. Anna's teeth jumped start jabbering in the hiss of her mouth, her swelling neck tapered and rope burned against the stranglehold. Her thin skin folded in cross-hatching blisters. Anna carries her hand out to her father, and the whites of her eyes go throng in spider legs of pickled cherry. The van door went pop and it surged. The coyote pulled the kid in, loosed the tourniquet, and that squeeze rope squish off Anna's face. She goes hard for air, and it goes out of her like a gigged frog. Jorge. The coyote throw on a heavy sliding door, and it slams them shut. The van got on its tires like a cube of sugar put on the back of an ant. At any rate, the coyote walks around, gets in, cranks the engine, and floodlit a geyser. Two ghosts give up the heat of their bodies. The van crawls up the pot face of this rut earth, and in one final fleeting red breaking red light it plummet into the darkness. Gone. All bloody and wet. The she-wolf lurched upon its mutton chops, a tripod. Her foreleg was pulverized, cock crook, and it pinned to her pelt in waves flexing. She shivers. She hop-stepped the distance to Papa and put her gold whiskers into his ear. She hop-steps aside him and drives her muzzle underneath one of his arms, inside his armpit, sends the body to rock up over upright. But it won't. The she-wolf stands there like that for the longest while and watching. But there was nothing else coming, and there was nowhere else to go. 3. A celestial hunter backdrop and backlashing broadsword across the spine of this dawning Cordelia. Watch, and watch this starlit giant burn up into the limelight of a blaze-blackened pinnacle. Miles into this massive panorama ride a heat wave of horsemen, each of his own monstrous convex distortion. 3 navy silhouettes on a jagged sun ray, hoofing saddle-torn beasts in the twilight of a blue night kiss the red rose of day. The patrol jumped down slope into a garden of bleached shin-daggers, a steep escarpment of emerald rosette, beset in 2-foot spines pointing out in every which direction, yawning in the dirt like barbed blades of monster teeth, and every single one of those goddamn succulents looks to be the resting bitch face of some kind of hellacious, earth-shackled, worm-like creature that'll chomp you down, drag you into the ground, and eat you. Nice to meet you. A tan-bark hand thrust into the mouth of one of them dangerous lettuce heads, and it was using its dirty fingernails to itch at a whizzing blood splat till it flick. The stamp work was brittle, but the outliers are legibly red. A pinky, the ring finger, and the bird. A man had bled and fled, and this was the chase. The Mexican hunters pit ear to ear in the dental mold of some wild fascination's fancy. Teeth marks rut in the skin of an apple. His face shaped like a shark had microwaved his head in a coffee cup of boiling hot water, gigged the noodle out, bit into it for a minute, sucking his ears to the ribbed roof of his sick-skilled throat, and just letting him go, having left him cool forever like he was. Chilling. His nose was absolutely not on his face, and like every quick fix never meant to be a fixture, he'd fit himself with what looks to be the crude craftsmanship of a homespun wood-scrap prosthetic beak. He'd ordered the plank whittled to look right, but it was overmatched and linchpinned to his face with a brass nut that dot him right between the eyes. He narrowed his vision. God only knows how this man discerned for decision. Estamos cerca. Near? 2 prison guards in stirrups astride their orange horses, limp bridles and limp wrists, rifles slung barrel up across their sweaty backs, and both was in sweaty little green olive caps. Warriors, geared just enough to take on just a few of these desert days. One asked the other for sunblock. Admittedly, he too had forgot. The Mexican hunter hands the crooks of his fingers for his face, spins a brass nut off the threads of a bolt, unsticks the stick and shown his wretched cavity. He sucked pop and he sucked pops and he hawks a loogie, surveils the land, dials the gizmo back on again and turns to a front seat for this shit show. Sheathed to hip is a cavalier saber, soldier blade on Spanish hilt, and holstered aside that, a revolver. The Mexican hunter helps a stovepipe for a stirrup, swings a leg over a lime horse, and he went. Four. Can't no gun-blasted jailbird take flight. His wish fell into the death wail of a false star, and Venus loomed pale by the sun. Hours of night crawl let his vomitous breath be caught, fist deep in cold gut atop a howling plateau. He stood himself cocked right all chicken-winged and feeding any slack and flesh to that swollen injury. A bead of salt lick leapt off the tip of his face, it cursing that tower guard for having snapped bullets at him. Close your eyes and listen for a hum. Ho hum, and smile smart, for the smart smiles do go away. His cool body warms into the day. Crazy afraid, sick and low sugar, and got that nauseating worry of not knowing what it is, or what it was that was going to happen, and it to him next. Shirt tails gummed to flank matched the seat of his breeches. Had a hip pocket steeped in a soft clump of jellified mucilage. His balled-up fist wound up tight, let go of the gob, and the webs of his fingers woo apart. He bunch a button up into the orange juice eyes of a black cat inked into the armpit hairs of a wicked-smelling tuffet. He figures on a hole, and a whole bone-white hip shone out, and he figures some more. His Kool-Aid hands crept into the irritated edges of that puffed flesh. He tucks it and bucks it and hauls his waist back on like a heavy pair of wet slacks. Green bile in the pit of his stomach hiccups. He heaved dry, a retch, and he drooled. Pain outrun comes to catch, a reek drift to call, and hello, two live bodies that a ways away. A horny toad munching marching red harvesters nabs one off the line of their many chemical words. She was chock full of pushing daisies and crawling in soldiers. Pink spittle scat speckle her brow to bust. Ants paddle in the panic of her icky, sticky gaze, glazed eyes, and ants tangle in her nose hairs. Watch the bore of her breast. See the bullet hole that put a chink in her dress. This woman was lying face up at the bottom of a deep swimming pool inside of her chest. Ashback cinderbellies run a fever pitched against the wind, and smoke spin out like twisted boogeymen. A scorched chicken char to spit, and that jailbird come along quick off yonder ways way, strut down the calcic horizon. He trip and fall and bust his head bounce hard off the concrete caliche, but he pops up pretty quick. Kept on after it like a skipping rock across a lake of desert cement. A jughead takes a dirt nap, and it bled a splash. A pop-top cap let drip drops waste its handle on Adam's ale. A jerk knee hip to hop-a-hop crash, and two dukes dove to dig towards the sandy quick to crack that bottle's neck off. Its sopping insides tip back to choke a thirsty maw. The curly hairs in his clavicle knot shock. His lungs hack as he spouts off a mist rainbow. A guttural croak belch as he swabs shoulder for elbow down a long sleeve of sheer rags and tastes the salt for his denim, and just watch there with his wet-huffing, beer-dripping, pink-sucking mouth wide open. Was it her humming takes his looks her way? Death's lips are blue and gray, and she'd been long, deeply kissed. Beyond that passion, a meandering fly bow its wings. Some tiny note on some tiny fiddle, flying lassos and landing. Flying little lassos and landing. He looks lost. The red cap cost a twinge. He snaps the seal back on that slosh and skates the vessel down a long line of them. Not a one thrown from its haste and respects, all was willing to pay. The army, less a horn lizard's belly, carries on, but One ant shouts down the crack of his ass with a sting, and as he stood picking his butt, he kills it. Hot doggy, good night, son of a bitch! Crawling in ants, he danced, swat, shuffle, tippy-toe, hot punch, and claws them britches down the pale yams of his holy scab skivvies and rosy butt cheeks. Flapping by the seat of his salty shirt tails, he tangle, skip, lasso, and jump a jump kick. A gainer is a forward falling backflip. Can the navel kiss the forehead? Like a lawn chair folds in half. Fast. Ralph fails to do the kick-up kung fu. He footy the bitches off the shanks of both ankles, slaps a fly button, and whiplash the ants into the fuck you's oblivion. The unforeseen sight of the thing stunts him into the hush you's hushes. She parked about there, aping. The she-wolf's face hailed in a murder of ravens, enjoying the concert at a confident distance. Her fire-cracked forepaw hugged a heart and a teeter. Her mask vacuumed the light at him, open for a tongue and closed shut again. She takes her good legs and goes, as does the crows. He still got pants to put on a dangerous number of ant bites now. That sound in his girdle suck pop. He thump a leg deep and the zipper tore in two, and the only belt loop not broke was on his thumb. He sleeve his limp legs on and lumped there like a piece of shit not worth the sack he'd scooped himself. The hairy thing, lurching, on out that a ways, and he watch at it not turn back. If less was needed, well, he'd be giving it, and just like that, that she-wolf was gone. The burnt bird burnin' was to be eaten, but he swallows it. He dump a canvas haversack and its insides spill out one winking senorita, pin up over the scored folds of a fertile matchbook, given the one matchstick, a map of Texas and one ripe avocado. A dead man lay duck-footed, his boot toes fish for 40 winks. Between him and him squint for the sun was his hat in the dirt. He fit the shade over his study and takes it off. Had a silk lining like the sap rings of a chain-sawed tree, and within those bands of sweat keepsake a photo, and he plucks it. Some dirt road child kicked and read Justin, smiling a missing baby. Frozen at play with a downward dog, the fringe lace on her dress spun on them kindred spirits, and the snapshot catch a little girl off guard, a whirl in this world. The hat was a beaver, dove gray, and a level brim of gloom comes to lay over his mind. His views untether into a shallow score of sun-kissed chicken's feet. You see his long shade, stilt up all shush-like over the wooden body of that dead man, and those boiling whites bursting cobalt cradle the blue a while. It was plain. The dead man was fixed in ways of which no men could have committed a chance on. The soles of his feet carry him 33 paces he does not count, and neither day nor month could be held upon, but in that shift stand him his years. A man's life and all that it measures, matched in footprints, hat to blue body, barefoot. The dead man's hand goes like 3 legs torn off a kink spider, a white nub of ghost skin gloved down the quarter index, and the rest was tipped in violet half moons. This was what's standing up there, tricked on the arm, straining up over the trunk of this body like an ugly puppet casting its mourn upon the wake of its master. He wait for the dead man to tick, but the dead man take too long. He thinks it safe to say that the dead man was gone. He'd figured on the jacket, and he'd have those boots too. The purple jacket was leather and in parts so rubbed as to look velvet, but it weren't made the purple suede. One cuff sleeved up near behind the elbow, and the other snaked off of its arm. The body situated as if sprawl, as if to key out from that kid skin for the fall. Jugulars, running up both sides of the meat and side of the skin and side of the neck, kinked off like a slow-leaking hose, leaking what God knows. A headless trapezius, freaked out in a most muscular pose. Life after death just goes. A mute medley play on this sight, and not a blue pencil could strike a note from its error. If a man might unsee a thing such as this likely be that very thing the man go on and unsee. He digs in and sleeves a cuff off of the dead man's most knotted arm. One tug cranks the body. To jerk the jacket free, he'd have his jacket, but that's not what he done. The collar was polished in oil, and it slowly inch apart from the nape of its jam. On the slide, them shoulders can't. That folded neck unfolded, and by God, what come to face him turned to do so on its very own. The stolen hat go a glamour boy, and beneath its splash pitch thunderstruck. No capsized tortoise could have quicker kicked. He did not lit his eyes, no. The blink of things he did not see. The dead man slipped motion, bottleneck and belch, and strumming to a flutter of soft palate clicks. It winds up to be a funny story, but then it all winds down again, quiet. There was a goof in it all. The dead man's ocular socket smashed in place like a freshwater clamshell, and the eyeball inside offset center its pearl. To bisect the lion's jaw and remount it, off even, cheek by jowl inside the skull of a man, was nearer the truth of what was than anybody could have sat the week long to conjure. The dead man was marred, clear struck with the object over and again so hard as to break his face, his neck, some jackknife mutilation. A focus will tune you death, root you in spot, a strong box, jerking the hollow cacophony. Had his heart been sharpened on the backs of Arkansas stones, slicked in honing oil, it would have been for naught come the dulling nerves of this instant. No, in that split second he knew his morrow, and it was cool. He picks up a stick and pokes at it and sniggers. Goddamn. Shot the woman too. He dumps a sandcastle from the mouth of a serpent and wears the boot on to the tip of a rattlesnake's tail. Diamondback scales and toes wiggle. He spanks grit from the stovepipe of a plucked ostrich, stuffs 5 bewhiskered toes down the dead man's hose, and chokes the sock down that chicken. To his thumb, he lent a kiss. Give it to one, kissed again before the other. The man stands out in both snake and bird, and by God, shoulder by shoulder, them enemies would slog. He turned his life into the 42-inch measure of that dead man and tips his hat shade cocked over, the sun glister in his tangled whisker. The purple misfit went zip, and it felt good to be hugged tight. To put that couple in the ground was toil he'd take no part in to be burdened by. He'd already drugged the one, side by the other, placed her hand for his, least that angry digit, and goes to swaddle and making sick faces beyond the veil of 2 kid dresses. The one petal pink with coral lace, and that one with the fallen leaves of an orange wind were the only 2 coverings he'd paint himself to improvise. So he bags up both their heads and bow ties them on. The oddity had now withdrawn from this woman. Though she be under this day's destruction, her condition was clear. Shot. Killed. It was the man held her hand gave this chill. Not a single ant dare cross to crawl for he. In fact, the lines from which they all came became the lines to which they all now go going. The last lost and lonely amble on. A chainmail of tarnished red plate armor greased in bloodluster takes silence down the crook of her sugared elbow. The ant tripped no steps for a wrist of braided etchings, and enters the palm of her blue hand inside the palm of his hand. The soldier traces its tread lightly, reading maize-tipped fingers swirled in flesh-toned paisley. It doubled back, adrift in lost bearing of scribbling ovals. It wanders weary up the line of her life, and when her lifeline had ended, the lost ant takes rest on its side and curl. Cast for spell, he saw the ant die in that way. No way. Knees buckle, haunch for heels, that purple jacket wound up fast for his shoulders and cinch fit into a gash of sap meat. He's been shot, remember. Inhale fast, exhale deep. He lipped the edge of hide off the pain, let it go low, and the reposition of his disposition goes a heck of a lot better. He could stand to sit that way. He'd bring on the picture, that girl with the wet-nosed chucklehead. He'd push a hole into the dirt, and with his finger, he scooped the ant up, and with the shoveling edge of the picture, he puts the ant in the hole and smooths dirt over. One last thing. He situates the picture into the holding hands of those lying dead. He didn't know Mama and Papa, didn't know their little girl, Anna, didn't know their difficulties. He got his own can of worms. He shove off a knee and stand, sling a canvas haversack of goodies up over his shoulder, and tricks out to stretch his legs for the long haul, holding that red-capped plastic pitcher as it slosh. Now would you have a look at that? The ant. Dig up and kick out from its grave. Five. Thumping desert dust gyration, one hairy high-haunched shoulder blade shiver a pelt tighter tangled than the brambles of a thorn-thronged briar patch. Kink dogleg for a chair, the other split Chinese and quake. Lick your chest and look ridiculous. For taste and lead, an animal might swallow an arm. She quiver and gnaw, quivers and gnaws, and combs stale breath down a shag of baked blood, each drag of it parting pink, streak red. Bifurcated forks take their steps, not a round eye watch. One heat seeker will cool your temperature, and one faux pas is every bit of the cost. A spear-headed figure 8 flecks a 14-button maraca and asks if she lend an ear. Like in a gargoyle perched hillside of mackerel sky, them horns twist out, and she listened long and hard and still. Every nook and cranny sang off key. On go she kissed the lips of Medusa, and to the song of 8 snakes she traipsed. The creek bed was a greedy sponge, gorged in slow grit, and suckling the afterbirth of a fallen sky as it cook off the land. A raven's heels click twice as it lands, with a flutter of folding feathers betwixt the leathery ears of a tummified razorback, braised in a muck stew. One rotten peeper pops free and fills the gags of a gizzard with its glossy afterstinks. The gasoline blue rainbow clucks and plucks for a second's helping's butchery as whiplashing entrails slapstick bout the air holes of its mustachioed caw. The smartass was a brain, twig-legged, perched upon the green tusk of all that bloating flesh floating. In a pig's eyes our she-wolf, and from the depths of that bog came a fart blister's plume, and when it split wide open it stank. The she-wolf got the cheeses and sneezes. The raven gift the wolf the once-over, 2 shits and just flaps away. She spooned the skim of that murk into her maw and transfixed on the vacancies of a wild boar's ogle. What whining ascension! That too were eerie, and all of a sudden its sun-blushing pigskin bursts jagged. She startles up and watches the pink mist carry slowly downwind as chunks go up in one direction and come down every which. Slow ain't quick, quick ain't fast enough. The desert takes you. Rabbit! Her nose fed up wind and her mouth tastes like kid. That kid's armpit. Peach fuzz on her upper lip, the pet of Anna's salty mitt. As far gone as that girl goes, the she-wolf gets up and went. A jackrabbit fed its heart to a flock of 7 red-headed Mexican vultures. She studies her burdens, limps downhill, and put a tooth at the front end of any question asked, and some asks for it twice. Them buzzards stand aside and decidedly, this meal they'll share. 6. The hourglass figure of this fluorescent woman bent over in guidepost advertisement. Hand to ankle, this tube-lit effigy pivots slow on a hot pink tiptoe. Neither eyes nor lips held sketch beneath the bouffant. In the space of that face you could place any you want, and every pink part of that pinup would glow. Neon, ribbing out the cursed name of it all. A secret dirt road deep in these backwoods will take you to a double-wide shotgun shack shipwrecked atop the petrification of an oak stump garden. It piecemeal and run-to-ground sheet metal, hammered in one way or the other, likened to clapboard. Out the front door swing a song, southern, this honky-tonk. Off the path of come-as-you-go will take you to it. The lot, a pull of motorbikes and pickups on Texas red, Oklahoma grime. It was a prison blues whisper in the pine. Amid the scattered vessels of blood moon in this gin room did a trap pest tinker. A moth burn up in a mason jar with a gas light on. Sweet-tempered ceiling fans row a communal reek. The huffing huffs and puffs of puckered-up chain-smoke chimneys. Every practiced preacher's got a sermon over those whose turn in plain truth it were to speak. This place got a disco ball. A sphere bemused in laser-swept spectrum scarcely fathom it all. Beer, liquid meals of cereal crops on tap came pulled to pint. A skinny waitress takes up the millstone of this job, and she lank alien about this tea lounge windowed in rye, corn, and potato mash. A kid. A woman-child, at most maybe 17, maybe. Had seed in her planted the night last before. Some no-account drifter, she guessed, did look her in the eyes. In a few months' time, she'll start to show, and fearing that the drifter didn't pull out in time before he'd left to go, she thinks she's feeling what he'd pushed off inside her insides right now. had spark life to grow. The dirty old men in this bar give her no gentle squeeze without theft. No, they didn't ask her permission to cop hold of feel. A man asks if she smiles. A man asks for a pussy, she laughs. They all go quiet and they all watch at one another in the pregnancy of that silence, and then they all pitch in to tip her next week's pay to go and have her front teeth looked at. They didn't even ask what happened. The drifter that fucked her, he'd also smashed her. She goes to tearing up, and she give those dirty old bastards, each one of them, a hug, and they, each one of them, pat her on the back. She shoves the wad of money that they'd paid her into the front pocket of her apron. She'll find a backdoor dentist to have her sharp teeth looked at, and she'll ask if the dentist knows anyone who will scoop out the spark life inside of her, and the dentist will, and the dentist will fix her, and the dentist will make everything better. Resting in that surety, the waitress walks away, and but notice the lone man slumped at a table of flick light. What's it gonna be? That nighttime's butterfly in its daylight's prison strobe its single-frame projections. What cast against that paper wall? Papered daisies. Pushing up against his back, and that prairie ghost stay starring in the flick light of its very own metaphor. Benched, pining away. His red-capped plastic jug just sitting there empty as twice his gum smack. Squinting for a gamut of drift-shaped diamond comes striker features into existence, and the disco ball. Blonde she was, dirty blonde. Maybe he could tell. He wavers up to push his yearnings forwards, but the waitress had already taken his empty jug, and she was gone. You hear that moth? Beating its wings up above, and he points the darkest circles of his face at it, and those deep pools go bleeding into his red nose, and into his wide-open red hairy puss, and deep down into the glisterings of his red sticky throat. He watches the moth, and it fight-to-flight light, reaches for a linchpin, turns the glass tent honey, and all darkness falls harder, and that jarring creature did stop stirring. He pours it out, free and onto the slab wood table set before him. A moth, hardly a moth anymore, but it used to be a woolly bear, and he'd remembered not to step on those cute caterpillars when he was just a kid. He can see it hurting. One wing was nearest whole, whilst the other was charred to hilt. It smelled cooked, burnt hair. The wing that works tried, but the moth did not fly. It just flip-flopped. He gets back up, though, and it walks for a while, though, till a hand in measurement 5 times that of any average claps at the pine, and that scapula goes shimmer or shine, shattering into the air and partying into pieces. Floating confetti turn over and over. Death is a celebration. The rest is a twitching smear. Meanness and kindness are brother and sister. Meanness will never look like kindness, but at the right angle lit you can tell the two are kin. Off the edge of tabletop saw off the scrapings of yellow guts, and to the front flap of a chest pocket went wipe the nasty. All hands do follow the heart. Fingers thick as beer cans, and them tall boys knuckled up like one missing from the plastic ring of a 6-pack. The head of this freak near touched the ceiling, and when the freak showed turn into the crowd watched out for the freak's way. No man in this ballroom could overmatch the space of that human summit, for it was jaw-dropping. In a plash of segmented yawnings, a stilted antenna casting spells on the kickings of a fleece stick leg. Suffering's best served silent. It comes as it goes. He looks up from the dying bug, guts smeared upon the splintering edges of that slab wood, and he looks to where he'd brought himself, remembering why he'd brought himself. The jukebox turns a record, his mood, just a pretty little ditty. Second-rate shape he'd spent himself and all that energy just to see a little life get squished. All he had left was to climb to his feet, and so he'd sit like that a spell longer. His vessel came soaked. The waitress watched him swill and leaves him be. Vomit, vaulting volcanic, and Ralph, not once pronounced twice the like. His snake is caked. That soul had hooved a hole, and in it is a chewed sock-footed. In the belly of that rattler is a fisting foot fisting, and the ostrich sat still in its desires not to get puked on. The man drool, slaver and spittle. He sips swish swash and hawks a sour gob. He stem up like some wilt flower, a dandy in a paper wall of pushing daisies, grappling hiccups, fevered both in temperature and in song. Who put the fucking love song on? His emptiness on empty and nobody pays him no mind past their looks struck grim. But a few did take their time looking at him. A transfixed puzzlement, this puzzle in pieces for the shape that'd been missing. If a pair of pine spoons was to play on the blood-cracked hip of this man's heart, you'd be within an earshot of his hymnal. For all but anyone knew. Them spoons soundlessly splintering, and him pining away. On watch, his to the gaggle. On looks, his to the far side of faces. On spot, his eyes widen like he'd seen precisely what it is he'd been looking for. He cash in on that hitching gait of his, and he head toward his wander. The moth is dead now. All the pieces of it have stopped moving now. And he'd lost his red plastic cap to the table. Some weekend matchstick man was a lumberjack by trade and had conned an out-of-town truck driver into a contest at arm wrestling for the crinkled face of Franklin inked in mustached abracadabra. That Benjamin flapped face up between assholes and elbows, watching right hands hug when a bicep let loose the bend of this bow, and like a pine tree chopped to fall timber, his forearm knifed a jack parallel at 90 degrees. Huh? A flash of darkness hit him in the eyes, and when sight come clear, it was clear that he'd gotten himself into a damn mess. That trucker couldn't enter a doorway straight for his shoulders. That's how big a boy he was. And the matchstick man was just that. A brick red head and stick-figured. The trucker lucked into a wood chair joist for girth. That arm bit like a question, and the answer was this. The lumberjack was a log man, a limb man, and carried the weight of a chainsaw in his right hand close to 10-hour days, 5, sometimes 6 days a week, all but for preaching Sundays. You can't pay a man enough to hold 17.8 pounds of toothed chain spinning, trimming the limbs off downed trees all day. A man can't go like that day in and day out and not develop in possession of power. The lumberjack stuffed the $100 bill down a chest pocket, left the trucker tricked out. Blondie come to hand the trucker his beer and asked for its cost. That jackass couldn't reach the ass cheek his billfold sat in. The waitress picks his pocket, opened stitched leather to a stash of mustached $100 bills, and found the white tag of a Polaroid dividing lesser amounts in paper money. She went to sort out his debt and caught a glance of that picture just before the trucker snatches it back. She might have known what it was, what tan legs stood the frames of those white edges, had she had a second glance longer to look. It was labeled, too. She couldn't read cursive upside down. That trucker swallowed all but froth he'd paid for and left her holding Hamilton, a regular mo. A tabletop of tempered glass hailed your point of view. This pussycat walled off wild in shards of 7 years, mirror the luck. She was whittled. A whetstone of rose marble hung in circles of oil and toil and sweat. With someone's turnkey dime spin on pops and clicks. A wake acoustic electric steel string tractor beam coned down the dawn of this dish with a voice smoked blacks and blues. And both feet was naked. If toes were a bowl of rock candy, one might take their interest with a twist of butterscotch paper and suck off the chippings of pink cherry one by the other. She was strawberry knees in a syrup. All scabs plead a scar. A translucent weave of petal pink panties kept her a secret. She was ripe round and rocked in ways would set off a hive of honeybees humming bestrew a sprung field of fever-pitched lions, all the wildest dandy. A warm-hearted bumblebee in the belly-button buzz can be a hazardous guise to surmise. Gray matter in truth doth toil on a man. Her sweet nipples was cute. 2 puffs beneath the bleached tissue of a sun-baked cotton tee, twin clothespins had shouldered their marks. She ride Nirvana hug high on hips and gave with flesh, spirit short, no concert, both peaks and boobs. And that peach navel was fuzzy, liking the small of her back. She was traced the fringe gently, and when shined upon glow, to sponge your mouth one side or the other of those tiny golden hairs, to take in that salt whisper. She oaked the face of goddamn sticky and swept in hot mess, a measure of straw blonde for shade old berry across the dimples of Venus. And this lace-woven split tail stood in slight, one hip higher than the other. Each curving crevice, spoil and spook imagination vivid. Yearnings ate the murk of her shadows alive. After dark thumbs kissed the weighted fist, the deep V. Her neckline had healed the bone crooked. Her cupid's bow beaded. Eyes, bolting glisters. Bash. The axe eye of a great chopping head hangs its wooden throat off of the table, and that knob pointed a reckoning force but touched. A child. A man. That mountain. A zap implosion affixed to the top of some mechanizing trundle, and the white frame of a Polaroid were out in a ruckus. This freaking mutant of brute power plucks the afterbirth of the impulse and softly blows the darkest square into a fanning existence of colors. Off the chop of its whopping mitt chalked chitin. Desecrated, the beastie's remains, desiccated. Moths. Flying tubes of case-hardened snot paste. An overbit elastic meth mouth sucks off a hooked thumb, his cheek bulb pale, and outgob a glazing ribbon of snapping spit stringing off even rows of toothed gold post near the front of this polluted cavity. Prime rose bleeds and sheets, 12-carat ornaments in a mouth of purple meats, and the white coat on his furrowed tongue agap the outfall amusing. Fiends, three dressed in lines of leisure. That salivated sucker crust itself in a poor man's candy, and when the dope head smack, his head thump nasal. To smell the ninth life cast aside a cat 9 days ago would stand you her stage. Show me a show. Say, darling, show me a show. The dope head's finger puppet went out of this world, and its plasma-plastered space helmet smashes into an existential orbit. Wrapped into the cosmos of this microcosm, that junkie walk a moon man up the space legs of this long woman, and her split tart run cross-stitched. And so he yanks her by the look-through cottons of her buff pussy and kinks her in a way that rides her on top of his thumbs-up fist. That moon man and her bouquet of pink petals all tugged to a bunch, and its glass-shattered visor spiders, arresting the folds of her fleeced mound. The dope head go fast to chuck a finger in her pussy, but this blade does not deafen its switch. It was a 9-inch automatic bayonet, came to lock point at one hippity-hop-hopped up peeper, and the prickly hairs on his head went to standing up like salt and pepper. Should the dope head's thumb fuck into her, she'll drive deep. She'll level the blade over and across the top of his head and saw into him. At this sharp point, should the dope head mutter his last breath to launch word one, she'll drag the two-faced edge across the bridge of his eyebrows and snaffle from him his earthly vision. Should the dope head's estimation of her next action be nearest approximate, she might, rake the stake zigzag and heave a stiletto from his armpit, splay him, wide open, cracked out. On third thought, thunk a fourth, and that unfair kink fell a crow's foot wrong against the bubblegum lips of her blueberry pussy, and she just run herself a finger correct. First prize teeth buck over the head of that astronaut. He near gag and left the junk rock dressed in the pocket of his lower lip. Of no action's consequence, he sit back in sheer awe-inspiring admiration of her, a grinning styled upon him sweetly. Work-a-chick-ch, lit snippets cut this moment captive. It was he, sunken sockets hollow, his bottomless wallow did bat her bypass. She miss a beat safely, heedful the ganger, and did swallow. His spellbinding. A dollar bill turns and 5 folds a crop duster, the jet bound in air over heads of pointing faces, those spiral and sporadic sat static their spaces. The listless corkscrew, a level ending's crash. To the dollars, yes dollars, a dollar was trashed. Pop click, and the needle off the record pop click. In the room bled moan, but for breathing, stock still. He'd come all this ways to which thereupon be fit to flat bomb, and so there he was, in smooth moves made and making them. And offer and palm beheld nothing. In cold feet she did think, and in thoughtfulness him stood, and upstanding, sort of dying. It was plain, and it was simple, and it was without pattern. The kinds of things love was supposed to be made up of. A hand for hand has it all. He urged her feet for a steel-bent seat, and she come step off a folding chair. Paint-chipped toes and bird-snake soles, her trigger sword show-off sheathed. Him a prayer past praying she mazed, and did softly mouth his dazzling name. Workatom ch. Let's go. His voice croaked. She took heed at such careful considerations and ticked off alongside whispered remarks. Grasping straws, he slapped an elbow captive, and the doors on that woman come unhinged. No shortage of passion play on the bob boobs of that body, but a dirty look does hiss. Those heavy eyes and the one more so took to telling her a mind would race no more. It was like knowing someone the longest you've ever and being introduced. Let me get my things. Slack gives to the main squeeze, and he pinch her weenus. It was an oddity of no objection, perhaps charmingly comforting, and then she simply went on about her ways. Ain't that funny? Just shy of shut-eye, minus 40 winks, and one cat nap. It'd been 4 days since last Z snoozed. He looked zonked to see the resting bitch faces of Washington watch up at her walk away. All but the jet was a rubberneck, and he felt the room do her like so. An enchanting bewitchery. The powers of honey will forever plague on man a mystery. His hip pocket was brittle bled, sealed in blood and with a fistful of dollars that crunch. He snatched the rest of them bitch faces up and did them just alike. All except that folded jet for safekeeping to keepsake. He flied into an unfastened breast pocket. All in all, it was a $32 memory of his injury, and it come on a rush, throbbing hot once more. Tommy Wolfe, is that you neath them whiskers? The phlegm grackles. Purple bags of badger bloodshot did go and kiss a butterfly. Might the devil's words smell like brimstone, or was it that sulphur tap water swished in his jugged hand? Halitosis is hellacious. The ninth circle of hell is a pile of dog shit stepped in, and not a sidewalk's edge to march it off on. Stuck, boots the smell of poops, and dragons call at your name. Tom didn't know his future with God. Of men and of monsters, and of pain, and of this place being just a further start until the very end, until his end and absolution. He thought of himself a road higher than that netherworld. This was Texas, maybe. And if she wasn't by his side, then there weren't no way out. Rings of blue hue bizarrely possessed, watching the go of a one-armed ceiling fan row out a family of second-hand twisters. He let his dry whistle wet, caving in on that gallon jug little by little. It was a dedicated cold shoulder and silent treatment, as the smell of rotten eggs tastes like rotten eggs. It was all that and simpler. There weren't no tricks in a quiet getaway. And he, Tom, teetering baby steps under the single arm of a chain-pulled windmill, never came across right-minded enough to lay claim to that blame anyhow. Tom Possum played. The dope head's breath baited, and the giant takes his lever action up on his way over. In range, his reach outstretched the axe, and a pecker drip a drop or two yellow. The big man pitch a letter J into the bottom of Tom's sump bucket, and a burst of well-wishes bat the canister contained. Tom's gulps piddle plastic laceration, and that chewed nipple cut a crescent moon just above his 2 front teeth. Red drops dots the floor, if but for splash. Those did wisp a bit. Tom's Van Dyke held a red paintbrush, and that kisser bled on into the handle of his bowl. The behemoth on sheer display, something fierce, and thus so all attention went the matter turned toward. Top of that fat head 'bout touch a water-stained ceiling tile, a fan blade cut smoke 6 inches shy of that mean mug or mean muggin'. But Tom had a question that went written unwritten across his forehead. The woodwork brought on 3 more, and the dope head got to his feet also. A swallowed tongue never did hide what a man thinks to say, and by the looks of it, it was on. And Tom didn't have a shit-kicking shot at beating the odds of 5-on-1, much less in the state he was in, but in any other for that matter. If they wanted him killed, but Tom knew this. He would have been stood there holding 2 halves of his head together in place and with both his hands. To take that beating, considering, or Tom thought he might, and sweetly. He brought that leaking pool to his lips, and it supped from him a whirl on blood. All in at once, they came for him. Seven. Combusted bulbs all lost their souls, but one let loom this corner of vanity. A dressing-room mirror, the maintenance, and with nothing in it maintained. This tin-pail squalor, a mop molding and shallow scum. A whiff in the air knew where it come from. Racked rainbow brazier, a farmhouse laundry sink. Bright bottoms in the bottom, and suds left to think. A hatefully treated love seat sat back against the wall. Years waiting broke breaking, a great number of fall. It was those she'd loved up that loved her back down, all ashy and chafed. It was crinkled and leather-bound. It was there she beset, right there she was found, dead center, split beam of an upside-down frown. Born to a mother of 16 years don't bring one into a world of teachings, for the ways of a child goes in all directions. She went give up to her great-grandmother whose heart failed while slashing at the 4-year-old with a switch tugged off a tree limb. That was the earliest memory. And the child wouldn't stop crying, locked outside with a backyard goat. And when they found the old lady prone in the dust, that nanny goat was at balance and hooved atop the silver hairs of her head. Authorities notified the mother of this child, who did not attend the funeral. The babe was taken to her grandpa's house and lived in the sticks with her son. She was 7 when her 17-year-old uncle played with her for the first time. She catch the uncle snapping at the waistband of his underpants behind the hollow door of a unit-cooled bedroom, and when she pushed her way in to see what the fuss was, he let her watch on unto himself, and he shows her how he does it. Put his thumb into her mouth and pets her tongue out and stretches her cheek to fit the beating head of his warm penis inside the hissing spit of her small face, and she thought best but lets him. It was a lazy Sunday. 3 years later, that 10-year-old stirs her grandpa up from his slumber, and his barrel chest levers up out from his lazy chair, and it weren't for no game show host shouting on a black and white TV. Her arm was tucked elbow deep into the waistline of her breeches, and it was blood she hands out to him. He draw the girl child a warm salt bath and saw her dip her boyish, muscly skeletal form into it. The tips of her stringy hairs go to her shoulders, wet, but she didn't want her grandpa to leave the bathroom just yet. He was already faced out the door, but for her, in pause, he came back lumbering down atop the crackling vinyl of that air-cushioned toilet seat. She began then to tell her mind to him, and he, inside the warring zones of his splitting head, simply listened to every single last word that little girl had had, and it was only after these 3 years, finally said. Next morning, the father walks his only son out into the woods and takes his boy's head to parts and pieces with a 12-gauge. He saw his boy's bottom jaw hack off into his throat like a ripping can of beefsteak tomatoes. Men in the olden days don't ask questions. No, they don't talk so much. And 1 week later, authorities rap the door, sheriff, 2 deputies. And they all take their walks into those hard woods together too. And when asked why, her grandpa wouldn't say, just that it was him that did it. The only 2 men that little girl had ever known in her life, she never once saw again. And no one could explain it direct. Subject matter has its authority over words, it seemed. When the girl child went to go live with her mom, she got 2 babe half-sisters. That child watched children whilst the mom played outside. A big-eared man come around every now and again, claimed to be the father of those 2 littler ones. He once brought a paper sack full of burgers. None had cheese, but they enjoyed them just the same. That man took sips from a stainless steel canteen that left as many words smelling royal. In the French fry grease of a white paper sack and black lettering it read, JC's Ice Cream and Burgers. The kid sitter started scooping ice cream for minimum wage that spring. Them babes were old enough to watch themselves. She comes home from work one eve to find her mom nursing a bloody nose over the kitchen sink. One of them babes been beat with a coat hanger and had them red-hot wire welt marks all across the backs of both hamstrings. Those cross lashes ran the half-sister down rump to both ankles. The sight was a little girl holding a littler girl suffering in arms. The youngest of all, bottle-fed, rag-soaked, sat soaking it all in, and it was just like that. Her put her both feet on. I tried to stop it. Sniffles. Blood pours out of rhythm into the stainless steel kitchen sink, and the mom takes her bloody rag to her bloody face and shut up. On flecks of puke-green linoleum square tile, a wet diaper hoop about the wide-open belly of a baby, and that mom crashed that child in cheers. Our little girl was alone. There was no one that knew better to know better. That big-eared man did come around once more with a spring field of fresh-picked flowers and a mouthful of the saddest sorrows. Even brought them tears. He was sent on his way with a pock face full of fork marks and a single fork stuck in him, pinning one big ear to that thick skull. Our gal went to work limping the very next day, and once her long shift were through, she limped home burgers for them girls and her mom. cheeseburgers. Pleasure will teach you a thing or two, but it is not the teacher. So long as the kettle burns hot, in this world the teacher is pain. In this world curiosity is the measure of a man's endurance for pain. And these were the kinds of lessons learned throughout the years. At times some hurt more than most, but most stopped hurting over time. And rough years had brought her into a woman, and the fit do survived them. Kisses she'd kissed herself, and keyed in the glass next to her spitting image echoes, Christian plus Tom, and it equal forever. She stepped 10 toes, 5 at once, into a pair of stone-washed cut-offs and hauls a wild fray up both halves of peach. She went bottom-bounced into a waist of 5 loops, and that full figure field into a red tab on a ripe-ass pocket. Jeans made short make pink parts frenzy. To a gray nylon gym bag went gathered her things. Tacked atop some chewed stick of spearmint as a black and white photo booth totem pole. At head were a fox and a hound masked, and holes cut for eyes behind each. One lower still, identities reveal. Plastic pushed a visor upon them fresh faces. A young man in his prime, the lady on his lap, a dime piece. Third frame down, the boy clown, him puckered dimple deep into the cheek of a goof. Those hazel eyes delight in full bloom, smiling. She was smiling. So pretty. In the lowest frame, they were out of frame and standing belly to belly with 2 pistols crossed like downward swords. Was it a trick for a treat? Could be it was Halloween, but they weren't holding on to no playthings. And our glass coat woman brought on a sleeve long and left the rest of that jacket to dangle. She plucks the pick off the gummed-up mirror and recalls upon a time went once. All possessions surmount to her bindle-stiff shoulders. She turns on and off the door. Eight. Angels topple over this lead-footed hour, swept up in a pink lake of red-breasted brim, weathering into the fires of our westerly world. A day can turn a cold shoulder wicked, can it not? A sun-cooked needlewood gnashed into itself and bled that forest grain to pitch an evil fascination fathomless. A man with no great shakes would have taken his pause, hypnotic. Heaven's haze did seep into the crackling surfaces of hell. The deep mist held a family of eyes glistering around this one, and that one holds its bleeding crown. 8 points forked off the brawn of a trophy, bisect this crazing corkscrew. A deer had to lie dead somewhere. What won't keep moving, the field of battle keeps, and that buck-led whitetails wag way into the thick as fallen angels fell like bronze vultures, screaming into the abyss. The natural mother balance of fatalistic beauty, and for every rhyme her reason. Mankind live unbound the boundary of this brute world, an inferno of woe he bringing to himself. Nine. Kamikaze June bugs shower the neon darling. A spider fishing flies surprise, caught in the thighs of that pinup, and a crevice weaver fit a fig eater for footy pajamas and read it its bedtime story. A vintage symbol of sex put on pedestal and blushing over a grass field hadn't been bush hogged for weeks. It'd catch attention. It'd bring the dirt lot action. On perimeter was parking. There looks a sun-blasted cruiser, boxy, hood to trunk powder blue, bone white on this side, a shield across the door, and over that white wall wheel well outright red police. It had lights to flash and a megaphone to blast. It was a cop car, year 1970 Plymouth Satellite. Down the line was a gremlin, a Bronco, a Skyhawk, a big rig Ram minus the load, a hog with a pig-side car and a tow. There were more. A few, but the least of which would catch an eye, which caught your eye. They all took on a variety of condition make-do. Make model come the year, and they was in use. A bar fight spit out hissing, and it sounded like a peaceful evening of alley cats fucking. One of them goons sank hips and spears the chip of his shoulder into another man's liver. One bend and one hyperextend, knees capped, capsized independent. Well, Tom's legs buckled ouch from under him, and his holy water went to fumbling. A wobbling J-split jug spat its spiral of sulfur and iron into all her stupid-looking faces. That goon hump thrust Tom off the ground, and what goes up does come back down. Strength enough, strong, technique right or wrong, both a blessing and a curse, and it could have been worse. Forces centripetal, fuck you, and Tom lands so hard a dash of dullness dart up his butthole. Any chatterbox kid in the grade school yard knew the name of this game and called it Kill the Man. Next to nearby did Tom's jug smack slosh and scoot. By sheer fluke, the bully Doc Dick left to Tom's gonads and shoves off. Tom levers up a gasping yawn. Them few brawlers, the dopehead and the giant with his toolbox tomahawk, were all watching what they had done. Tom sat there and held himself like a child needs to pee. Both nuts check out. Tom looks to those men and his butthurt feelings come back again. A puckered taint tangled a hot flashing lump of excrement. He'd come to regret soaking his guts in that sparkling waterborne. Do his innards make the voyage of Rio Grande? Or did he shit himself, you ask? Does a river frog bark twice and not hot? Who's to say? But they did hear a frog sound an awful lot like a dog. The life of feelings don't come near enough soft. And Tom, hush a puppy. This meet and greet, it all goes to stitches. They kind of just laugh it off, as if to take what they've done back. Like they could take what they done back. Once you made fun of what you've just done, you damn sure ain't left yourself room enough grace to retract or retrace, and knowing that must have been surefire and funny too. Hard knocks never meant so hard, huh? Well, they sure could dish it out. Is there anything worse than laughter after the push you've been falling? Squinting smiles rest off their faces. Tom saw that golden hour turn open their eyes, his witness to watching them watch him human. The error brings on a strange humility. Enough was enough. Tom felt the pity pitifully, and he suck it up. He went to fork up off that downtrodden road those heartbroken sons of bitches tried to nudge him for. If you've ever felt sad for feeling sorry, well, you'd know the use in that. He wanted to cry, and once you've crushed a boiled egg, you peel it. They let him alone. They'd watch into this thing they'd broken. They'd watch it pull itself together. Tom palm in a pebble and push. He'd pull a giant bird into his chest, and under that snake he'd put the hole in its soul. That pebbled gravel craved into the heels of both his hands. He tried twice up before he groans up, both nostrils knocked out and snot. A bubble blew a bubble. It popped. Tom stares into the deepening sockets of that dope head and closer rid himself these wobbling circles. Dirt in Tom's eyes weep into the corners of his mouth, and it tastes like dirt tastes like. Tom saw his busted water jug, hand for knee, takes it up, dripping, broke the bowl over his face and kills its every last drop. Its useful misery was at its end. It had given him all that it would. That piece of trash had kept him alive, and he smirked. He smirked a grin in front of them men, and then he just outright cheese. This shebang is insane, and it all depended upon these cuts and kindness. Hard bits break you, soft bits make you. Life goes on sharpening her blades. Allow me live. No thanks, you. Damn it all, don't you dare cut me with the dullest parts of your edges, neither, you sons of bitches. You all. You're gonna cut me. I knows it. You knows it. So go on and make your marks. I won't blame you. Cut me deep, cut me hard, cut me fast, cut me long. Cut me slow and cut me strong. Carve me out of and into and out from this monstrous butte. I won't blame you. By the time you'll be through, I'll be deep, chest deep in love with you, all of you. And we'll have made each one another better than our best for it. Smart never did make up more than half the word smart-ass. Luck might have been impressed, but Tom wasn't pressing. He was thinking his asshole was bleeding. As a matter of fact, his asshole was bleeding, but it was bleeding lots less than he was thinking. He was thinking one whole hell of a lot. Tom pushes a free hand down the backside of his breeches and swipes out. Fingers tanked to tailbone and flinch. He holds his hand out like it was an alligator might bite his nose off. It smells like a busted ass. Like a hard wind from a short tail of a wet bear. There weren't but a little bit of blood, and he hadn't crapped himself, and so that was a good thing. The woods scream out cicada and scare a jumping field of yellow-armored grasshoppers. Out the tavern, that one once in glass, which score one or two heart-circled names, Christian. She catches her man Tom opposite men, soaked in the clocking twilight of this day, and not a one of them breaks his ugly face. She went over and stood beside Tom, and they all kept on watching. She looks at Tom and she looks to those men and then looks to Tom and then to them men again. Beneath the heat of all brain power, their red juice siphon. Puffed chest, rise and dive, and she could hear it on the insides of that dope head's head. She didn't care to let it say what it said. I'll pull around. She goes. Tom wipes his boogery nose. On the off-even heels of both Tom's boots, she came a rumbling misfire, sat behind the wheel on wheels between two car doors. This rainbow array in tarnished copper pennies. It was a black-top Buick, and its good years were balding. Above this red reflecting marker, an emblem cast zinc. The name on the machine was Skylark, and never a letter ever asked why its tail had fallen off. She'd put herself in one hot spot, and both her hams pinked. You could about fry a grilled cheese on the seat her ass was sitting in. She takes her shiny nylon jacket off like rock and roll and set that sizzling ass on top of it. Where a woman's made to wiggle, she jiggle all over and over and over again on a knob that cuts her driver's side window down to a door. On high degrees, she huffed a breath on a breeze that never came. Her lungs scorched in oxygen and collapsed. It didn't smell like a new car either. It had that old car smell with the scent cooked off a little flat green paper pine tree elastically bound to an out and open ashtray, and a plug lighter to punch was missing, and the tray was a yellow Bic throwaway. She took the heat deep and leans over that broiling dry rot vinyl bench seat. In this oven, every little thing gave a little sting. In a pinch, up pops the plunger on a locked pin. She slapped, tugged, she slugged. The passenger side door was being a bitch, so she sat back up to kick and kicks that bitchin' door the rest of its ways, and all it has to hang on to cries out into the open. And her cutoffs ride you. They don't hide you. And her panties zap her pussy pink steel. Flowers got powers. She sat back up, one leg long for the pedals. It was gonna be a gas. Well, that burnt orange pimply big bird came from an Arizona safari, a Texas cobbler, and the rattler was a Salt Flats Justin. They both backed each other up for the car as dual tailpipes convulse away. June 78, license plate, Arkansas, land of opportunity. A tractor give out on a pasture of rolled rows and fresh baled hay. A firewood fence of barbed wire rush on that far out space and time just as slow as it goes. She had a head full of stray angels drove out of her mind. It was the prettiest trading words Tom had ever heard, and he was smooth flat to let her wear his eyes out. He could neither see her torment nor speak on his own. He shivers. Gust is chill. He felt sick as a dog dying, but he'd seen a dog make a good life out of one worse once. So let's say there come a day, and all you got left in you is the last you got left in you. It don't matter how scribbling dark and ink the shot your life beset in. You turn a page. You write in the bleak light. You put her name down on your heart and you charge like a pistol. Hammerback. You keep on this side of the line of life and death, and you dot your eyes forward. You hold your ground and you pierce into the pit of that ruthless reaper's bottomless expression. Let there be humor. You pour your face into the coldest circles of yellow in that thing's eyes. You let fear take off its disguise. And you aim your sights small, the smallest you've ever, 'cause after all the time that's passed you goodbye by, now you've finally found why and just what it is that you want. It's taken every single last one of your days to get to this day. Today, it's the last straw. It's the black cat's broken back. It's the very last shot in hell you got at any chance of getting what it is that's best in life, and you better know what's best in life before you go and go boom. You better damn well know. You better damn well. Should the semicircle sickle come fall. And so she pulls that rump-warm jacket out from under and drapes it across his shoulders. The temperatures slip out its sleeves. Her warmth closes his eyes. The maze of our minds take us over. This day does not see this man suffer his death. 11. The false moon was shocking. Light don't always lead the way. Sometimes you go with your gut and your guts get spilt. Life. You try and not die. Well, in the feral armpit of a wilt dandy, she hugs the big lug up 18 steps, and not a one did he help her with. By the time she got to the top, her legs had pump swollen, blood thick, a heavy breath and a heartbeat in her face. And there was 2 keys on a ring in her hand. One took down the number 5 door. Sturdy. A good woman is. These complex apartments U-shape about a dead pool, half full and teeming with mosquito larvae. The owner put a few handfuls of common goldfish in for combat, and all but one got eaten by a common snapping turtle still in there somewhere. The lone goldfish keeps to the shallows, feasting daily on wiggling hatchlings like they was potato chips, and knowing that somewhere out there in the algae green depths was a red-eared matchmaker gonna make its match, and just like that, a yellow-crowned knight snatched the only glint of gold left in that pond scum, and took flight to pave the streets of heaven with it. You just never know the time. Nothing does. A stainless steel swimming pool ladder went off the deep end, a requisite of residency. It weren't no wishing well, but a pocket full of hard-headed presidents must have made their splashes. First kings ever to make the living at the bottom of the bucket, you could bet they each wanted a handout too. Consumers consume. Sap the Indian and the slave and the medicine and the woman. We coined the loudmouths, put their heads on coins too. A red-cent dream ain't a wishing bean, and nothing grew. What fat-headed nickel and dimes done nickel and dimed you? The meek fed on a promise-face profile. In God we trust, or so they say. What ain't written on both sides, a quarter ain't written on both sides. $1 and what used to you get for one now can't be got for the other. Lies, fed to the belly of fools. In combat we go grossly distended. How romantic a war. We rewind and press play on that movie once more. And nowadays they tell a vision on the television. Commercial breaks, soul division. A hill of beans, American dreams. And we killed every color of man who's had one. What God's own 33 years don't show. History don't repeat this. But those dying aims to kill the rest of us. A skinny, long-legged fly hatched from its shell with a blood-sucking crazy straw hung out of its mouth. Vampires, hardened for the world. On first meal's flight, one shot for moonlight, and that's what spontaneous combustion looked like. 21, you blood-sucking bastards. Down railing a second story, a catwalk, a live mouse in the mouth of a calico cat walks, and at rest were a dying ember in this neighboring boy's silly blue hand. A Virginia Slim held palm up like some fairy's wand, and within it Mama's magic powers. Time and again it was what she'd said, and that was how she'd smoke 'em. Crossed ankles reached to rail and ride the hind legs of a steel-bent folding chair. His dirty little blue fuck-you finger flicking ash to spark. He smiles like moonshine, hand in lap a mason jar. Scruff by neck running that bitty rodent racing its place and it cry a little squeak. The boy brought fire to his face to breathe and gave that calico cat a pat. Well, Mama's first stolen cancer stick was a birthday candle she'd left in the boy's frost cupcake. Just one on its own, and a carton of cigs she'd picked up from the Piggly Wiggly. A 10-cent cup of cake, and to a single mom's delight, it shortly lived. Fingertips and lips had dyed of food coloring, a sugary blue icing smudged steel to the tip of the boy's nose, a regular Marlboro man. A wannabe 13 too, but he'd just turned 12, and for him, midnight about to strike couldn't get any younger. A stranger had brought the jar, and Mama had him in her room. What's the cat's drug in? Who's you gots, Chris? Who's you gots? Chris. Christian. A bug-buzzing zap of electric blue hue motion. Tom and Christian stopped motion and let a doorway shut cheerless. A wicked hush on that blaring wet whistle kept coughing Christian short. There was a deadbolt lock out the muffled shout, and that door jamb hung in its own shadows, jerking. Snap! Aha! 22! You bastards! Mosquitoes cooked. Shuffling steps on linoleum breathing, Christian's inky mass moving against charred darkness. She'd left Tom solid black against the door, inset the light lines of electrocution. Spring sprung under her squeal. A chain switch tinker. Lampshade gave a pop a day-old apple core. It all appears hips higher than her head. She was on all fours and crawled in bed. A banker's desk lamp set the rug-wove nylon, laid the fray, and carpenter knived against the walls. She pulls on a brass bead chain again and once more than that, and once again the room was lost and lost her. That meddling chain switch tinker. Weren't no light could shed her situation any different anyways, anyhow, and the underlines of her ass cheeks did give a pop sunless. She kick off a set of high-top creams and her shoes fell to the floor. Linens fit ill, a yellowing against the coffee-stained mattress, dry blood spotted in spots, charting her cyclical nature with that of the moon, red as it were. Cliché. She might have been a doctor or a lawyer or a switchboard operator at a space station telling everyone but the president, "Please hold while the lizards cook in a can." Who knows what she might have been, hadn't the ways of the trigger sword been so easily pushed. A moral compass as strict as the sea of people you voyage upon, and you can learn a lot what not to do, watching those do it. No, Christian weren't too good to be true, but she as sharp as a glass splinter, and she got will, and that makes her ready, and ready is all anyone ever need be. From this wall to that is a line of clothespins. Pants and shirts hung dry was too big for her, and they was men's. The landlord lets her wash his laundry when she's laid on rent to make amends. Christian switched light on in the bathroom and run the bath water. A 1960 short, fluffy, plush pink bathrobe with belt and pom-pom decorated tight grouping and 9 clustered nail holes. Tom didn't steal the robe. It was a second-hand gift given by an old woman didn't know she was giving it, and Tom felt it funny to say it that ways, but Christian did not laugh. She did hide a little grin, though. It was way back when, and it was young love, and they were both learning. He lifted it from a yard sale on a weekday. Some rotten, snot-nosed kid was riding the living daylights out of a spring-loaded black beauty, whose price tag was a whopping in the wind, $5, and all a diversion unnecessary. Tom made it out like a bandit on a quick step and walked away slowly. Christian asked him to take it back, and Tom asked her to try it on. She looked the sneak thief dead in the eyes, told him just how this was going to go, how it was going to play out. Tom had a soft spot at 17, and his girlfriend Christian loved it. That old woman never knew the real reason why Tom came back every now and again, Tuesdays, for an entire summer cutting grass, taking out the trash, doing odds and ends, but Christian knew, and what she thought of him was all that mattered. Christian shit cans the poop man on a standard American one flush, and by George with a heavy flop. The mean green butthole on that toilet bowl broke to pieces, and a piece to ceiling hit Tom for his chest. It claps out or whack. Tom's keister off-kiltered, stupefied, and blaspheming that cold commode water. He weren't in the habit of having the Lord's name in vain, but he weren't usually changing water on a goldfish like this neither. She grabs a hold on his heels, one by the other, and pulls a snake off a socked foot. But Bird swallows the stocking. She hack a zipper down the blood mortar of a chain-toothed cow, Papa's leather jacket. The last button down that blue jean button-up was Tom's wounds for what they were. Hairy, gunshot right, in clean and out dirty. She skins the scab breeches off by ankles and strips Tom bare ass, all but for sock as it were, droop-hooped and saggy. A scar the size of a flesh-toned earthworm crawl up and out of his armpit, and God only knows how he'd retained it. The arm, that is. Tattoos accounted for, and all but one a mistake. A handsome circumcision buds its pink head over a set of bulging balls in a tight package. The prick was there, and that made it the least of Christian's worries. Upswept in a mess, she ties her hair back and knocks his sock off. Stinky, liking a fresh squeezed frog tears. Rubber plugged the bathtub, hot watered and deep. He was nodding and yawning. Tom was falling asleep. She grabs at her wrist, champions a fist, and stuck her neck out as she was sticking her neck out for him. It was clean and it was clear as late as he steps in, and then it turned a bloody, muddy body of water. Tom takes his balance on a dried up wafer in a white soap dish, tiled into a rosé wall, and hissed, dawdling the crack of his woolly ass into those piping hot waters. She turns the left side off and left the right side running, cooling. Backbone, bone, and goose chills, hands to crotch of Holt privates, and the cheeks of an underwater chipmunk went nuts. A scalding crow's foot grimace simmers across grit teeth under brush of a beard tip wet. The borehole reddens, the love handles puff, and that slug's juices steeped out like tea bags of English breakfast. Tom was a plum stone fruit cut in half, watching up at Christian, a bloodshot nutcase. She thought him a little boy in the midst of a big old man too big for a bath, and then she writes the right side tight, cool enough, squeezes a bottle of yellow instructions into a pale rag, turns it blood orange, soaks the washcloth, and put it to him. Tom's dick bucked thick up out of the mustard waters, and Christian ignores this, tries best to ignore this. An ox-eyed daisy going bald on top was jarred, labeled Seagram's syrup, addressing this vacant table for two with little white leaflets of love loves me not, and with each petal plucked and offering up to this bleak room its decorative nature, its cheery sensibility, its scented potpourri. In window framed a skylark in the dark park. This one-room kitchenette tub to toilet weren't 300 square foot, counting a catwalk. Nail. Heard it hit the bathroom floor. Bed dressings were a misfit, sprawling furls of static, all charging towards the last step she'd stepped out on. Let there be a bean pot to piss in, though. Just a little hoop-handled witch's cauldron of cast iron set to fire on a gas stove top, boiling microscope monsters out these white western black paisleys. Christian brings on a pair of 11-inch needle-nose pliers and huffs the do-rags dripping, fridge magnets, an odd rod's mad shifter, and a get-your-kicks 66. She pegged both kerchiefs to the hood of a stove light and left those orange grips go nose-deep, long in the boil. The exhaust fan sucks, and her steadfast in the maddening haze, twisting off both those sanitized snot rags. No question it was cockamamie. The one time she'd done this before, she'd seen it done like this before. Tom rounds the corner plush pink, slick wet in a bow-tied pom-pom so petite it near loose free the tip of his tallywhacker. She knocked child locks off a bare bottle, fingers 325 milligrams of original strength out past an overstuffed cotton ball, and hands Tom something to drink. He put a cloud in a glass flask of distilled corn mash and looks out into an empty audience but one watching back up at them. In the window across room held their reflection as they were. He watched at it a bit longer. This place was listening for them straw-snout bugs snapped to death outside. His ears pricked to the thrum. And Christian held a 5-grain tablet of aspirin out there and waits to see what he'd do with it. His thumb stood out from the rest as if to protest. She folds it once over into his hand. To pair spirits with the pill was a painkiller, and Tom popped it. Go lay down. Well, Tom did as she told him. Went and bent over, and that girlish bathrobe did broaden up tight against the small of his back as she gawked upon his cracked rear view. His mustached ass wiggled its way into her bed. He pulls his balls out from squish, his spoon-bent legs, little squirrely wet hairs scattered down the backs of both. And deeply he rose in barrowing breath, and without a blow, let it go, slowly. A Christian brought over what she'd planned to do to him. Rags by now were cool, warm to touch. She took the corner of a bandana and stirs it off to the side like some trick-rope cowboy, and then folds the wad into 2 pigtails at center. She took up the instrument, a set of 11-inch needle-nose pliers, and held them in a straight line over his blasted hide. Entry to exit they was just long enough. Clean, just come out to boil. Christian takes a breath. She tests her metal to the top of her hand for temperature, and without warning plunges into what's swollen shut till it shows out the other side. She go to hilt, deep as the scorched rubber on them orange grip handles, for a pinch of screwed paisley, and she drags the rag back through. It but arose and blood pop out the other side, and that's where she left it. It were a mess. Damn it all. An infection she weren't sure could be wicked by hand alone. She'll change the bandage again later to see what color come out of 'em. The colors will tell her how much trouble she was really in, or rather, he. If it were sap rose, she might have healed him, but if it would gum up green, good God, they should have found a doctor. She didn't know what the hell in tarnation she was doing, no, not what she was practicing. She did see a doc plug a gun hole once. Her stepdaddy had shot himself in the leg, and her mama called a doctor come over to stuff it. It was a hip pocket lesson, and she had remembered it front to back. Thought was, if that son of a bitch survived. She'd have called him, the doctor that is, if he was still alive. I had a nasty cough, and that doctor died. There were no treatment and medicine hours outside this county anywho. She thought Tom best off resting anywho, and at the same time this whole time he'd been smothering himself in a muffled pillow, mutedly screaming his ever-loving head off. Tom's body ghastly gasped in pain and flexed in ways horrific. All that pale skin sunken in, gasping in horrors of hostility, twitched betwixt the finest fibers of his fibrous being, flush red, every striation in that wicked body shred, a rib cage of rigid fingers teetering and tottering after the long crying were through. Tom shut up and saw his gray tears print his face into her pillowcase. Tom's pink nipples was hard and hairy, and they hurt making bristly fists to both feet as Christian fed him a drink of cool water. She sing this lullaby, some old world hymnal, but it don't help the pulsation. Out and out felt the sense memory of a hammered thumb. Tom concentrates and it dissipates. You know how a baby cries? You pick it up. See? It's like that. Holding pain. But for the pillow biting, he never left her. A man can hurt so bad and make a face beat mad, liking men not to show a woman these shades. Frightening. And what could have shown she had not seen was not the point. She was cool as a pup in a mud puddle. By and by, perhaps this moment in mine's recollection were romanced. Kiss me. In one ear she did not hear come a traveling whisper kicking on a bus-kicked drum. His eyes struck out in red-stitched curveballs. To lie in that bed and not go was the reason. Her polished thumbs smooth over his bottom lip, Lincoln Park after dark as they were. Her fingernails combing over his good hearing and into a thickening haze of gray matter. The blows of her breast are beating into his beard, and still he does not stir. She brings her mouth over top of his and stuck at it. Salt flats and iron. The kiss was deadening, retreating, unequally distributed. He would have no recollection, and for that she was glad, smudging the pink proof of it all into the corners of his mouth. She gave up to tears and trembling into a ball on the floor at his back bedside. Him was dead to the world, and her cried to sleep. Not now. Now it was night, and the early birds began to sing. Chords of wet juiced across the red moons of this painted mattress as Tom's dick kept on. The huffing. 12. ¿Qué diablos es eso? Like a dog outside at night in a fight, you can hear it, and what it is you can't even tell. A flock of floating white rams stampede off the shoulders of darkness. The sun chase after its breakfast. In this place the pastels are leaching, booming red. A dirt berg float dead in a dust bowl reeks into the looming degrees of a newborn day. Those bodies, mamas and papas, laid a long ways out, still but holding hands. The pitch swooped like someone snipped off the tail of a beached walrus. On the shoreline of a heat wave, 3 horses stood, the men on their backs, crashing. And one out front slipped stirrups by the horn of a saddle and by leash, hoofed the spooked horse behind him. Off hip haul a saber, point toward the keening. The Mexican hunter dares not flinch the bubbling knots of his tooth-cushioned face from what he forced himself to walk up on. Bodies. Mama's going sour and Papa's head yanks on, blasting. Hems of skirts tucked into shirts, necks tied on top in a top knot. These scarecrows flat out got kid dresses tugged over their heads. In recollection, Tom did swallow their ganger. The one pink as a pearl is wet in the chest and huffing. Frills and furbello is puffing. Ornamental open work bob out the collar of Papa's cloudy button up. From the neck up wouldn't shut up. Papa kept right on. The screaming. A great toothy harrow plowed over the feet of 20 men stood in a row one side the other might produce the likes of this throwing fit. It was harrowing. His daughter's dress shaped over his manners, shaking like spokes on a wire rake after the raking. His torso truncating, marooned, head ballooned to a tiger-striped punching ball, fire of life and a sky lantern blast off, but weren't no ways this was happening. Papa was supposed to be dead, but that head spring kink on tighter than wax paper twist round the bleached stick of a sour lollipop. A throttling lay up in there for its throat. Sounds like a caged Wolverine run wheel inside the belly of a boa constrictor. All brain power leans over listening for that deep song bound in the chest. Just a grouch muppet lilt ringing on a pull string of gibberish. Knees kept shape a bow, wafers crust off the roof of every toe. Fingertips to chips and that half-digit give birth to a dirty-looking hooking point. No sullen snare sought for charity would be baited. Papa's fist boxed up tight and them talons punch out the other side. A great yowling, pang so wide it trump out of socket. The whole thing starts to pump swollen. When that meathead split open to gasp, it vacuums its daughter's pink, slobbering, wet dress down into the gullet of a sheer and form-fit mask. And this thing swallows and swallows. This thing, what was Papa? Gags and chokes and swallows and swallows. That edged weapon sloped backward into the Mexican hunter's goat-gloved fist, and he bore his chocolate eyes down into these images, chewing on the insides of his pitifully chewed-up face. And when this thing rocked back, he rocked back. Took more than a single whop to chop this thing's head off, and so the Mexican hunter is chopping and chopping into the screaming. And the screaming is cutting out with the cadence of the chopping, and then all them two men rode in on their orange horses. What the Mexican hunter could hear clear was the lone barking of the whistling sword. Meat broke open and broken bone broke too, and it was just now that both bodies, Mama's and Papa's, was together in death and gone. Well, Papa's gross head is far removed now, and so the Mexican hunter snatches the fallen leaves of an orange wind off of the woman's face to see for certain that she too were dead, and so she was, loose in her bluer face, and he let her like that. The Mexican hunter cups his sword against the dress and ran it over and over until every chunk of flesh fell off of the blade, and then he drops the dress like a shapeless sack of wet leaves to the ground. It goes quiet, quieter it goes. Arms attached to them butchered shoulders hadn't done a thing, but the man and the woman, Mama and Papa, didn't have each other's hands no more, and the answer's now coming for the two. It did feel like magic went missing. You could see right through it, clear through the square pocket of Papa's red-dotted white dress shirt, and the Mexican hunter takes to a knee to pull out the bigger picture. A little girl, Anna and her pup, and when the Mexican hunter stands up watching like he'd seen a monster in freeze frame, the sun crept over his shoulder and saw to it that the picture turned to see-through. The little one, little faded red boots, and the dog with its butt in the air. The Mexican hunter flaps open a pocket on his person and hands the picture in safe for his safekeeping. A slavering hunk of rock candy spit back into its vivid paper, throat and bone working up from the dress. The thing does not rest. Not by the tip of a sword were it undressed. Your guess, the face of a dead man, was not all. A boot heel to the head and it bark open. The Mexican hunter stamps out of this mess, and the mess goes with his every stamp. He stands off to see to it that it has nothing left, and it has. He takes for the water eyes of his horse and his men, and they all go in another direction. All together. Imagine the day this way. Had a 4-count box of block-headed wax sticks coloring all by themselves on the insides of a brown grocery sack that they'd ripped in half and laid out all panoramic-like. It was a bright yellow sun took up the corner of this canvas with a blue face shined down on a little pointy-toed red boot. Had a green stench blowing out the top in a swoop. Then a great, big, scribbling rainbow turned to darkness comes over the far side of this draw with 2 pointy ears, 1 pointy nose, and a whole mess of pointy toes. The straw had a big mouth, jagged as a line of squigglies, shouting one word, written downwind, up ahead in a bubble. As it read, the monster said, "Sneer." What a funk. Shoo-wee, and a gentle breeze a blow. Anna's red kid boot got a dash scuffed toe. This goat path is a meandering retrogression, cringing at the sight of the she-wolf steering upon it like a scrambling fist of chaos, holding every color of rainbow in thoroughgoing pandemonium. Her velvet muzzle nuzzled deeply into the open shaft of that red kid boot, and her flapping jowls gave way to a great blubbering sadness, it sounded like, as gusts of salt dust go peppering into the open woes of her wild imagination. And the poor thing yak up a bluebird flapping into the yolk slime of her heaving dry stomach. And the bluebird tries to fly, but the she-wolf Mouths the bluebird up, breaks its flying bones and swallows. Anna's toes was in the she-wolf's nose, and so the she-wolf goes. 15. The fuel tank rot on this ride, and it juiced the air a fuss. You feel the van was coming uphill, and when it topped over, their stomachs fell out of floor like elevators. Every bony ass was bound in error. This life, this great rolling ass chewing, and that don't stop stinging. Their flesh were an array of olives, each a different jarring, and in those fermented faces one might reckon the pickling year. Anna was a green one turned bright, minding the pit of her stomach. Hold tight, she catch that motion sickness. Here pet rock shot like a pinball thump between pop bumpers. Was a patch of rust show the dirt throughway cruise out from under below, and when that drive shaft spinning over and over and over again come to a dizzying dead stop still, she named her 3 dinosaurs, Bok Bok and Bagok. Last night's chicken dinner clucked down the drain hole like a tossed bowl of wet oats. The lever action on a driver's side door play out in a pitch fit, and when the weight of it bully shut, they all coincidentally caught the working actions of a shelved collection of doll-faced bobbleheads. And that nice park job asshole sounds like a spoon-fed mouth of cold cereal walking away. For them other girls, pay Anna study like she was front of the class. First to show and tell, a plastered volcano, chock full of the arm and hammer. As she'd gone milk-sopping that vinegar, and with a cupped hand cupped the upchuck from her chin and slung it for the scabbard edges of that metal rod, beyond the gaslight of ever escaping this windowed floor. Anna watched. A squished box turtle bash its beak against the gravelled ground until its tail stopped waggling. A dozen rose blisters flowered between its upturned eyes, and that armored goblin quit. It did not flip. Their breath was gasoline, and hers the aggravations of a soured animal. 11 years into life, and had to meet these moments. Her preamble was through, and their goings before lost. Were it not the whites of their eyes decked out in these boastings? Bummed on a hump wheel well puffed a peach quinceañera dress. A teddy bear hoodie was a powder blue footy, and a red-booted leg gone dead crisscross, applesauce. Them others, but all keyed in on that crazed gravel tussle up from afar. Every bug wants out of the jam jar. Anna tugged the red boot off a deadened foot she was sitting on and aims it, toe toward the door. Weren't no handle out of this one, but all knew what was coming open. The coyote were out there dragging it in, and that catch come along quicker than any snoozing whistle hitherto a morning bell you woke live to, and this minute amped on. The bubbled toes of her flintstone foot roused in a rush of hypersensitivity. And when that sliding door boosted out in a railing upsurge, and a scent for a hound had been waiting on that other shoe to drop. And like every tattletale ever told in the history of tattletales, it ran like the wind. "16. For Tom, it were those first beating years that judged to stiffen his young heart. Well, Tommy toughened up, though. He does his push-ups while he learned to spell, but maybe he don't spell so well. And his grade school teacher is the smart-ass decides to be smart and tell. So Tom ripped that note up on his stomp back to hell, 'cause what the devil don't know bodes well. And by the time that boy can turn his latchkey, he could see that Western Electric punch dial set laid off the hook he didn't know he was on. A basic black replacement screw cap 6 holes over the ivory receiver. And he begged for pardon. Hello?
Hello? Winner! Mississippi State Spelling Bee champion circa 1948 is my claim to fame, good sir. Respect. Noun. A feeling of deep admiration for someone, something elicited by their abilities, qualities, achievements, and or respect. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Correct? Correct indeed. Now, how is it that I am to come into good faith believing that anyone under that roof of yours is familiar with the term and its meaning? As it stands, case in point, young Tommy goes lost past the point of falling backward on a bum in the seat of a chair, a mind adrift as a butterfly must be put to pen. Perhaps one might, you, be willing to reiterate the importance of the word and its narrow meaning, to which I am certain you demand of the child once stepped foot to enter the doorway of your own household. No doubt. Hello? Have you listened to a single word I've taken time here to iterate?
The devil is a short, fat, sunburnt man, holds his weather-beaten tail by the D-shaped pin and the bleached belly of a squished bullfrog hand. The ghost he'd give up in this place, it was a coffin nail burning in his puckered face, and a girth cord of elasticity this pregnant belly stood up full of shit. His principal cotton's gone rotten, and that's all he'd ever sport. Home pants on weren't no pants on. He stubs his last in the butts and ash of a harvest gold glass tray. Come here. It was in this way he'd say it, like he'd just plucked a cocoon woolly bear off the twigged branch of an oak nut tree, and with a wave wanted you over, come see. Lassie was barking on the color TV, and it begun to sound an awful lot like Mom weren't home. The boy, all his own, sat out to sponge on the bets of his brains, and it all was a snap view to a shit show led to way worse, and he'd known this. Knowing nothing lasts forever. And so he'd take what come no matter any way be done to him and over. The twang in this kid's chest resin hollow as a bow of horse hair on a fiddle of cat gut. It was a short, long walk over that he'd gotten himself all turned around, squished his grass-stained knees to the ground, stabbed two-bit thumbs down the pink seat of a pair of sweat-through underpants, and stood a rump in the swing of the looms. He bunched the frosted face of a great tiger into the mustachioed nooks of both armpits, and held the consequences of having two young fists not big enough to fortify the gamble of self-preservation in the yoke of that sling. Tom's prepubescence was ending, and there was calico curls a-sprout like a litter of throwaway kittens bed down outdoors, and of all the places the boy thought they'd ought not to be. A brow as barbed as bolting saw teeth, and the gust of those heavy sets was a little old man bent over by the crook, picking up pond rocks. And when the boy clapped his eyes, them flat stones cast skipping across the surface of his image. Tommy bent over and touched his toes, and that telephone died. Screaming. A ringmaster petting the paws of a circus cub ain't savage. How many stripes did it take to get it to do what you can't tell it you want? The boy ran away in short bursts, the beating oval stretching out in rhythmic boundary bounding around and around him. A hateful experiment in sting study habituates the endurance for stings, and by now the man had built in the boy a great tolerance. Tommy's best arm suck out of socket, and the ground show him his glass jaw, and it put him into a brown study. The boy's arms both stilted, paused in attitude at his sides. And that 9-year-old flat laid out in welts of 62 belts when his mom pulls up in the drive, scooting her skinny ass out the passenger side of a ramshackled ride she'd walked 3 miles to thumb. Let a dude wag a wave bye-bye and slams the door twice so it's shut. This white knight sits put on tarnished wheels of powdered armor, roll a visor down off his pretty face at a damsel just lingering around on him to leave. She watch a cartoon squirrel run a power line with a head full of shuck nuts. Your name Poppins? Why, looking for a woman like magic. Fall out the sky. Spoonful of sugar? You know the song? Get the fuck out of here. She titter a snigger a snot cluck. This hero ain't finished grade 12 yet, talking like you were. He'd been at point-blank range, shotgun to ginger. Even his lips were spotted polishing the geared instrument of his making straight teeth. He gave an old-fashioned 2-finger salute, all cowboy-like Dick Van Dyke, handedly cool. Stuck the stick in the machine reverse, and with the sweetest nature backed off. Drove away. She let the kid get up the road round the bend before returning in slight his goodbye gesture. Standing put on that note, she took a turn for the worst. Sons and daughters of rich mothers and fathers were paying cash to take care of old folk can't take care of themselves, and some 99-year-old don't fear God makes her make a promise not to leave until the day shift dead. Well, this widow's house nurse been present for the fading fast now some 8 years ago. The little old man had a bowling ball in his nutsack the size of cancer, kept him racked to a twin bed bedside this little old lady. It came to get him one day, and his feet lilt there, running. It was an honest-to-goodness dishonest living by any government standard. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off to kiss the ass of a geezer's firstborn son come by weekly with a wad of cash to flirt with. And the economics of these transactions were at a drip-drop trickle. Well, saving up for all those little dreams, 'cause all them big ones cost so much, is earmarked at a price tag of every last good-looking year you got left in you. If those better off can't divide you of the paycheck they've paid you, they'll divide you by the years of your life. The underwear man is training rabbit ears on an idiot box at the time she turned through the door, and at the exact same time that TV stops scrambling, Barbara Billingsley walks out with a pitcher of lemonade. You see, ass pockets stamped over the heels of your kid's pigeon-toed sneakers. A belt. Snaked up, you little bear boy. In a trance at this glance, the white noise of your skin is shushing and the television booming loud attack. The antennas is sticking straight up now. She reached for the kitchen to draw open a drawer to plant what she'd find in that step fucker. She bound to strike fear, but when he rushed up on from behind, she turned too quick and lobbed off a hunk. Him went froze as a cardboard box of Napoleon ice cream and fit his whole fist in a scoop she'd dug out. He start melting. Couldn't keep either foot still for slipping in that warm strawberry. She makes her point pointed at him, and when quietly he sit down listening up still. She slashed the ball of the devil's red web foot, and it leapt wide open. "Just you wait here," she says. "I'll go pack your things." "17. Sleeved into a hot pink robe on a turquoise mattress of flowers reflective as a twist-tied action figure packaged to cardboard. Tom's chubby wooden Indian as a bobbing and throbbing, a gag in his gut steel. If it bows in his body, it begs not to bend, and then he whiz a rose-headed hydrant of mustard yellow into the air, arcing a meandering semicircle of stinking, splashing piss. A great smooch, and this cool keep triggers on an amber light at a time still brighter than a window's morning. A mess of apricot slugs stirred to the sides of a spooned-out jelly jar. A hard stick of salt butter Tom sits out to temper, and the millstone in his best shoulder goes to strong-arming bone dust. The man's got sand. Toast for toasting. Hen eggs for scrambling. The 12, cracked up in a styrofoam stadium watching 3 square stooges of butter staged in a skillet of slapstick. Tom whisks fork into a cereal bowl of yolk slime as slices of toasty wonderment fill the air. Breakfast, by gaslight of a stove burner, him and his saucy frills was just a dang-a-lang a-dingin'. Paisley print upon a herringbone grid has been cooked to a sterilizing boil. It pegged out overnight. A pirate's kerchief, hung dead until stiff. Tom cricks over a wobbly wood chair, casts back on his coattails, and permits a leg go cross, considering the hindside of a warm, pulpy, wall-eyed love handle. Bluer bruised than the brackish belly of a blue catfish. Tom took it like a sandwich squish. 2 barbed corners of a pale flag tag out both sides of projectile's projection, and the outlook looked pretty juicy. It makes no difference a man's wit, form, figure, or psyche. Let his affliction swell shut, and infection will magically transmogrify. And it don't gotta be a pull-up a weeping puss. No matter the headaches, the heartaches, you gotta get the goo out. And Christian's homemade first aid she plunked into Tom with a pair of stewed vice grips was glom to it. Limpid balloons of chalk pill dust detonate over his heart, and it burns, belching. His belly's still melting in moonshine aspirin. Tom peeps over it all, and Christian was spiraled up still, had cried herself to sleeping. The bottoms of her feet go like a heap of orange pups cuddling up in each other's warm napes. Gall dang, toolbox pliers lying by that litter all handy-dandy. And Tom bashfully bashed sat watch over the best parts at rest of the rest of her. Slamming his lids lashed to look see the dirty work piffed out of his hide a time again extra, 'cause truer than truth makes the truth truer, and in all but the one thing looked about right.
A telescopic rifle and a lookout tower shot. But what in the world? A bar mop, a handout for what he want, but what he want meant getting off his ass to get it. So he ride that luckless chair, a one-man seesaw, and it liver him up. Bent over out toward and stretched. A wallop on a wall, a shadow boxed against it all, and him with the jabs a jabbing southpaw. Now, Tom had spent the better part of this morning trying to thaw his snowy white ass out the warm piss he'd pissed himself. And it didn't matter how many times he'd karate chops don't all the time cut it. And so here he were again, doubled over in the abs, eaten to a task so easy. He's a kid, he'd walked up on a car-crashed squirrel with a broke back, claw itself to the grass edge of gray road, and so feelings go on feel like they do. But until you're prepared to sleep, you won't, and until that time come, you won't wake neither. Suffering blows its kisses good morning, says good afternoon midday, and if by oneself be discovered bits to pieces in the forward folding grasses of a tall blonde field, might too distress on that day's end be hushed into the steaming gasps of an everlasting cold good night. Well, Tom grips and whips the stove rag pop, stock still, him heeding her not off or not. Ass hairs for a chair, his trunk crunched like twist bark. Balls, blistering up between cross legs like if an heirloom tomato ripened a rye beefsteak till it splotched into a blot black crim. Beds of fingernails blooded, the gunshot flooded. Hook a live rat and fish for a house cat, meaner than a wise tooth crack. Tom hiss a hooping fit on them swooping cartoon pine cones, boiled for soiled. The jerk thump a knot into the empty drum of his belly like a plucked couch button. Dirty fingers for that dirty rag. Tom slaps his caramel guts to the sides of a stainless steel kitchen sink. His dressing's all changed now. He's up for a wooden spoon now. Go on! Stir you ye eggs for them burn. Treat yourself. Not a peep but a purr on a blazing crown of hayfire. The years on her eyes are where the tears have chased makeup. A t-shirt of tits squished between both biceps. Hands hamstrung out the backs of her sandwiched thighs. These pestle knees mortar these thickening scars, and with the candy apple edges of that flesh vex, just watch at it weep. She got the blue bone ballerina stink feet and that one toe, the pink one, kink. Tom marks the climbing sun spill a glass window right on top of her, and last night's dust and glitter still got spark. He takes her toe and she takes it back, and her brawn legs go on marbling out like two long violet fits of jolting stiff wits. Like two ears ducked atop a tomcat. Christian watch her like that. You hungry? Says the sapphire sickle works shy in the hot white middle of his blown out face. 18. A gift of luck keeps you conscious after the balm of life goes goo between two bodies of gated legs, and here we are, born blistering out, headstrong, tail spun and screaming into the arms of warped strangers. Again and again another newest, ever oldest day, bleaching smooth motion in after our sinuous ways. Why is it gods and goddesses never make their stay long on the stage of heaven these days? The sun is a ray gun, and we all know what ray guns have done. Amber windows thick as bricks, G-force monsters gripping joysticks, peddling nuclear missile rocket ships, standing room only for the moneyed man in gilded lizard sardine cans. Go find a place to land. And their mighty pens bled down into the turning pages, never knowing when its blue line was going to dash itself to death. And the sword writes its one word forever. $19. A Christian hark a 210 deli fork chirp into a huddle of hen eggs on his plate. Shakes the last sand out a steel-cut coffee can and put it on to percolate. The yield on her chest bow her back, and when she stands up straight, hear the clamor it craves. She got caught glancing green peep squeaks at that burning man ablaze in a nuked-out window, and Tom boomerang over his shoulder, wink after wink, pop pulsing in the lipstick mouth of her empty morning cup. 1,000-pound gunshot gorilla in its glad rags is playing a tune on a delicate dish. You gonna tell me where you been?
For her voice he quit playing the fork and lilt there in sunlight stall, downslope like the neck of a chain-whoop mule, mouth full. I don't care much for talking about it. A coffee pot begun to perk and they both let it cheer. Her words swish pop in the ear. It's just that you've been gone for so long. Tom boosted to his feet beneath like kick-pump footballs, and not all his toes is toe-nailed. Inventing balance on top of that, and not a word of sass back, apparently helping himself to a cup of hot coffee, black, bitter than a long-sleeve shirt of interview armpits priced the discount color on a second-hand rack. Hairs on a tongue squall, coffee burn his mouth raw. Christian, y'all, Tom, hell and back, and I ain't near out, or am I? A spike of volume, and Tom spits it in her face. She give a hard look, no retract or retrace. It ain't every man's got sense at base enough better than to shout on a woman, and any man practiced can't be trusted. By and by, ain't it the same goes for any woman suffers a man sharpen his lick for loud-mouth ways? Damn sad shame, seldom as is, teach how they want to be taught. Tom tranquilizes. You gonna have some of these eggs? Don't let me eat 'em all now. She butts in. What do you want, Tommy? He butt back. What you want? That's what I'll have. The audacious audacity, the imposition, permitting their sex mouths as equally valued in each other's direction. Tom looks at her, read at him, reading her expression. He lay down his fork. Have the rest of these eggs, if any you like. If any you like, don't let me eat 'em all now. A Christian waits to see if Tom's got anything more to say than that bullshit that was coming out of his mouth. Oh, fuck it. She snaps to it then, right on ahead, and slaps his fork up off his plate and pokes every last golden egg laid cold into her mouth until they was fast chewed and long gone. She's like, at him the whole time like, well, now what? And he don't say. A shaker of salt and her salted her tongue and swallows it, left him sit watching it. Went hamstrung over her jacket, sleeves it up off the floor, takes a picture out of pocket, held it to him. Insomuch as Tom don't have genius fast enough to behave for it right away, Christian situates the 25-cent chemical strip face down on the surface of a glass table in front of Tom to make flip. And pencil lead the backside of this photo booth picture read, summer of '68. And Tom flips that year over in memory. 2 teenage youths playing cops and robbers, and they was on a fast pace in need of a place to hide when they'd found themselves in a fire-breathing circus of jump-hoop lions, tight-rope tigers, and dancing bears. Him and her's trick pistols freezing out the back door of a savings and loan off the main drag of a small town square. But you could hear sirens calling, cop cars a-hauling, and in those came the good guys to catch the bad. And it felt to young Tom like he'd just found the only girl in the whole wide world worth wildly stampeding against the currents of a merry-go-round of roller coaster rides in this life with. On stretched in the far-fetched was a lone photo booth automat. Take a look at that. 17 years ago, rest up in Tom's open hand. Tom was 16 then, prettier. Picture this, a boy dimple deep in the face of a girl's cheek. Tom saw the boy he used to could make the girl she used to be smile. Wild and free, you and me. Her closet door is a sliding glass mirror, and it's skate off track when it booms open. Tom rooted and spotted that mirror stop shaking. Tom bevels a bone-stroked eyewitness to his scary as fuck face, chopped from the query of its once picturesque bloom. Out from up in there, the closet, somewhere, is a time capsule, and Christian hefted it forth in hand. A teal-blue steel ammunition cannon. She give it to the table for Tom to make pop. Where you going? In the whiff of an armpit is a tuft of hairs throwing the party. I stink. Turns out she strips her top off headway for the washroom floor. Hey, I like the way you smell. She let up, cradling the top of this fine hour with both arms, and at that, left him be. 20. Tom uncouples an aluminum lock lid, works out a Smith & Wesson 357 highway patrolman barreling fixed sights of blue smoke gunmetal, and it act like a real pistol. You thumb a thumb piece, a cylinder release, and a hive of live brass jackets were out on a whirl. Haul a rooster's tooth back and it'll thwack. His jaw cheese, him smiling cheese, and the jerk jerks off a silent sneeze. The room went jutted, a hand flash flooded, the gun hit the ground, and when it did, it thudded. Did it bit a blister hole punched into the foreskin of his interdigital vagina? Or were it not a purpling fist, fisting the air like a skin-gloved blood balloon weak drunk on helium? Or Tom strangles a fist, smothers the blood out of his hand, and chokes it down his wrist. See the white belly of his forearm ruin a hue blue? In squabbling haste the oath stop-start, statue still, for her shower rain on into his wonderment what Christian looks like naked. Back in yonder days, 2 kids, teenaged. A young lady wants to give herself her body, she will, and it was Christian pulls her panties aside for Tom to make pop. Each and every time her mountainside is mine, like a stack-loaded, free-floated carousel slide projector ride, where gravity fed up to 40 Christians, naturally positioned in vivid imagination, run wild, transparently fucking each other's brains out. Beginner's luck struck. New discoveries, and both bodies bucked into intimate spaces of all the places the two had ever huffed into each other's mouths creative. Love is when all is always forgiven, and nothing needs forgiveness. Notice the pumped-up kicks of Tom's swollen dick beef between his legs. Tom snaps out of it, and the rhythm of his life limps out of it. Think back thoughts all the more power you curious. She weren't no round-faced teenage girl anymore, and in gauge of this gravity Tom carries its burdens. It's the slowest living death there is to live, to pine on a woman. Put that in your head. Let it stick. You get this one thing right, figured out right quick. You quit. You can't have faith in God doesn't know she's God. That highway patrolman lay sidelong on the ground like the severed head of a trumpeting bull elephant. Tom winks for the ammunition can, irons out a scandal sheet with the edge of a knifed hand. An artist depiction, heads drawn on bodies like cartoon fiction. Tom let the wanted ad down, her in a fox mask. He, in a rubber yip of a warped basset hound, comes snapping out of that time machine, and Tom puppet the plastic muppet up over the top of his head, and both his ears went crinkling into a vacant space of sheer curiosity. A brown-eyed study in batshit as the mold maker of this madman's mask must have heed in the last seconds it frees, 'cause a cur dog was a-grinnin'. Man parked dog, a mog on haunches sprawled, the lipstick bad boy tethered amongst the pom-pom hairs of Christian's hot pink silken tuffet. Her housecoat styling's got no shame, groping at his part man parts like a Monday morning skirt suit hiked upon the sales pitch of a prostitute. Tommy, you bewildering specimen, you balmy son of a bitch and breathtaking beauty. You and your peepholes for the closet door mirror and that rubber neck thicken, the squish face chagrinning, his disposition in canting position, his posture psyched as a claw-hammered can of wet dog food for the electric can opener, to be cut open, to be spooned out, to be stirred in. Tom scoops the pistol up and points it, and Christian shower rains off with a screech, and Tom rips the mask off, and both his ears begin bleeding at their lobes. He spanks the dog's head to the table like a pair of rank dish gloves and lets the gun go on top. Tom sits, stiff, bleeding to the sound of Christian's toweling off. Turn around. Christian calls out to Tom. I'm not decent. Turn around. Thank you for listening to A Dog Outside at Night in a Fight by Justin Arnold. Self-published and copywritten in 2019. Audiobook produced and copywritten in 2024. All rights reserved. If you loved A Dog Outside at Night in a Fight, please visit and share the author's website at worksbyjustinarnold.com, where you'll find more literary, cinematic, and musical feats of showmanship.